All right. So this is. So we have Melissa
We're
Wong
live?
Yuen.
All right. Thank you for tuning in, everybody, to the Rainier Classic, the 4th annual Rainier Classic. We are here live in Tacoma, Washington, and we have just gotten started with our first event of the day, which is the Barbell Clean and Press for Reps. I'm joined here today with a world-renowned strength coach and athlete, Zach McCarley. I am Alex Jose, and we'll be bringing you all the action today.
Excellent. Are you excited for today?
Beyond excited. I'm particularly excited for all the barbell work that we're going to witness today between the Maxes and the Pro-Am divisions and the for reps competition we're seeing right now between the two athletes on screen and our novice women's lightweight and our novice lightweight men as well. We have Melissa Wong Yuen in lane number 1. And for our lightweight novice man, we have a gentleman named, I believe, Cody Lindsay. No, not Cody Lindsay, it's pros, pardon me. We should have Jacob Martin in lane number 2.
Wonderful.
And Zach, you have a pretty intensive background in Olympic weightlifting, as do myself on the coaching side of things.
The two of us do, for sure.
Yeah. What sort of numbers do you think we're end up seeing today in those Pro-Am divisions after we watch these fantastic amateurs compete?
Oh, so this evening, some of the numbers?
Yeah.
I would expect to see 400 or more pounds lifted from the ground to the shoulder and from the shoulder to overhead. It's going to be quite exciting this evening. I think repetitions-wise, for this first segment of the competition, we're going to be seeing some athletes hitting in excess of probably 7 or 8 repetitions. I think if somebody can lock up between 10 and 12, it's going to put them in the top 3 of their division.
Yeah, I think so as well. We're more than likely to end up seeing folks, I'd imagine between that like 9 and 13 range would be the top, maybe 3 to 5 placings, which is a lot of reps to do in 60 seconds. And right now, for those watching on screen, we have our men's novice divisions. I believe one of these gentlemen is in the lightweight division in lane number 4, and the gentleman in lane number 3, I believe, is in our masters division. Let's see here. For our masters in lane number 3 here, I believe we have Richard Komaku, and in lane number 4 for our amateur novice lightweight division, we should have, let's see here, we should have a gentleman named Halua Panaquini. I'm not even going to pretend to say that.
And then it looks like over in lane 1, we also have a Sila Bonk lifting, and she is in the novice heavyweight women division.
Awesome. Now, Zach, what are the things here that you're looking for a successful barbell clean and press, especially for repetitions? And how does that vary from something like a max, for example?
Well, that's a great question. You know, when athletes are coming out and they have a full 60 seconds to get as many repetitions as possible, you're going to see them come out a little bit different. They might be a little bit less hyped up than something like a max, and they're going to be, looking to maintain a good pace that they can keep through the entirety of the full minute of work. Sometimes when athletes come out a little too hot, what we see is people burning up in the first 20 seconds, and you can maybe fit 4 or 5 repetitions in 20 seconds, which is awesome. But if you're capable of 8 and pacing yourself, it's a much more experienced and wise move to really maintain your composure and make sure that you are kind of modulating how much energy you're putting out early, and then be able to get more repetitions, because that's where the athletes are going to be getting points today, is going to be who can lift this bar from the ground to shoulder and from the shoulder to overhead and control it and get that down call. Who can do that more times in 60 seconds?
Right. So obviously something very different than a max in that you have to be a little bit more controlled and precise with a max, let's say, at those heavier weights. With this, a little more about pacing your actual heart's ability to maintain what you're doing.
Absolutely, yeah. And then, managing your actual level of psychological stimulation is a huge component of that, because if you come out a little bit too hot, you're going to burn yourself up early, and this is about repetitions. It's not exactly about just hitting it once and being done.
Yeah, we're looking at our score sheets here, and it seems as though we have some misinformation, because this gentleman has yet to go, yet he has points, so maybe we could have someone check on that later. But I know for a fact here in lane number 4, we have a gentleman named, he goes by PR. He's from Salt Lake City, Utah. He's a novice lightweight man. He's a great competitor out of the Sweaty Pig Gym, which is
a wonderful name.
That's a wonderful name, yeah. That's Dungeon Strength's sister gym out in Salt Lake, the Sweaty Pig, and we're a big fan of those folks over there, and we're really excited to have PR here competing.
Excellent. All right, so this is actually the first year we are having this competition indoors, and it's kind of exciting. We're here at the Greater Tacoma Convention Center in Tacoma, Washington, and you know we're just making this contest a little bit more controlled, a little bit bigger every single year, a little bit better in every way that we can. And so if you've seen some of our past events, they've been outdoors, but this competition is actually going to be indoors all weekend, so that does change a couple things. And when we're competing indoors versus outdoors, like what would you say are some of the differences for that, Alec?
You know, what's really wonderful about competing in an arena like this is the controlled humidity. And that's not something people normally think about. I'm not really referencing in terms of, you know, how you actually feel as a competitor, whether the room's hot or not, but that extra moisture and now control of said moisture and environment like this allows for certain events to go a little bit more predictably, like if you're lifting stones or even the amount of sweat you'll have on the barbell from the atmosphere that will accumulate over time. Little things like that come into play that most folks may not realize. So when you get to be in an arena here in the fantastic Tacoma, I believe it's the Tacoma Convention Center here in Washington, it is just a more pleasurable experience and creates more predictable outcomes for the athletes.
Absolutely, like minimizing those variables that we don't have control over. So it's not like we're going to be seeing an atmospheric river occur in the sky of this building. We're not going to be getting rain down on the athletes or on the equipment.
Which has happened to us in previous years.
At this point, I think it's happened every year that I've been around at least.
Yeah, there was definitely a year where me and you were standing just in the rain with a single mic between us. That was fun.
That was a good time.
Yeah.
It was a good time.
Yeah, but no, so we just got done with the second heat here. We had some fantastic performances out of those gentlemen, like PR. They got some good reps here. Ultimately, we end up seeing here when watching an event like this is like you already mentioned, you know, you kind of start to see the more experienced athletes and the less experienced athletes really just in their disposition, because you'll see that panic in some of the newer faces where there's like they just start ripping, like plans out the window. They're just trying to get as many reps as they could possibly grab in, let's say, 20 seconds, and they end up getting fatigued. Like PR here started really good, and towards the end he was starting to fade in ability, and maybe he just went a little too fast, for example, in the beginning.
Yeah, that energy management is a big deal.
Right.
You know, it's a very big deal when we're talking about being able to work for 60 seconds all the way through.
And what do you do as a coach to help with that? What is something that you kind of have people do?
Oh, man, there's many things that I like to do. If the athlete's capable, I like to, you know, allow them to work in a heavier range than the competition weight. And if they can't quite get to that heavy range, I do like to sometimes allow athletes to work in a more broad window of time. So getting someone used to working for, if the test is for 60 seconds and we're used to working for 75 seconds at a swift pace with a lighter weight, that's going to carry over to being able to really exert yourself more effectively in a 60-second window, because it feels much more like a sprint than a marathon.
Right, exactly. And what we're seeing here, for those watching on screen, we have our Masters women in lane number 1 and 2, and lanes number 3 and 4. We have our novice heavyweight men. The novice heavyweight men are clean and pressing 225 pounds, and if I'm looking over correctly at the Masters women, I believe they're at 135 pounds. And frankly, all these athletes just did fantastic here. Competed really well. And all of them, just about to the very end, were getting repetition. So, you know, that modulation of intensity and controlling the pace, seems like all of these folks just did that pretty successfully here.
Absolutely.
And what's really nice, you know, looking back, because me and you have been to all of the Rainiers up until this point, and it's really nice to see the crowd develop as every year has gone by. Now that we're inside, we actually have a legitimate crowd here, and it's really exciting to see this competition expand. And, you know, for those that haven't come yet, you know, truth be told, the professionalism and quality of the show, between the equipment, the organization, the people supporting it, it very much feels akin to that of like an amateur nationals at this point. Like, it's very professional level. I mean, even amateur nationals doesn't really have commentary, so there are certain things that we're doing here that supersede most shows, and this pro-am in particular. So I'm really excited to kind of see this growth in general, and these athletes getting to enjoy kind of the fruits of the labors of the folks over at Dungeon.
Absolutely. I feel very much the same, actually. When I tell people about this competition, I remind them that this is it's one of the largest competitions in this region, and it is growing every year, and we're looking at pushing these athletes further and further and allowing them additional opportunities for competition after this competition.
Absolutely. And, you know, Zach, obviously you and I both coach at this point at an international level, but what are some of the things when you see varying technique styles in the barbell clean and press or repetitions that someone might elicit for success? Because at this point I'm seeing push pressing, I'm seeing strict pressing, I'm seeing split jerks, power jerks. What, if anything, would you recommend to folks come to do an event like this?
Oh, it always just depends on the athlete. I'm a very big believer in not being so extremely rigid to say one thing works for everyone the best. And if somebody has a lower conditioning overall, like a lower global capacity for work, but they have really strong shoulders, it may be beneficial to to clean the barbell and then to just press it in a less dynamic method. So you could say a push press or even a strict press if they have really strong shoulders. When an athlete is dipping and driving and something like a jerk, a lot of times that can accrue more work out of the legs. And if you can, again, it's more about energy management for athletes that are, having more challenges with conditioning. So
right.
it just depends on the athlete, really. Some people, and then say they are plenty conditioned and they have plenty of strength. That was a really good repetition out of lane 2. That was very impressive.
Lane number 2, her name is Shelly. She's out of Sacramento, California. She is an Olympic weightlifter. She competes in the 64-kilo division in weightlifting and in strong woman here. And she's coached by Ben Claridad, former Team USA member in weightlifting.
Wonderful. Yeah, it's showing her power clean to push jerk is actually one of the more efficient methods of movement for this event, which is what I was actually about to get into, is that has a faster repetition cycle.
Yeah.
And so if you can keep working for the full minute in a more swift manner, you're going to get more repetitions, which gets you more points, which is going to get you a better placing, which is going to translate to a better performance in the overall competition.
Yeah. And it seems as though she's switched on over to a split jerk as her fatigue levels have risen, but now with that pace, she's still able to keep going by changing her techniques. And a squat jerk. Oh, she almost did the squat jerk.
Oh, man, that was...
Oh, Shelly.
Very stylish.
With the Hanoi finish. Fantastic.
That was wonderful.
Shelly's a good time. She's the best.
I did not expect her to go for a squat jerk.
Yeah,
that was.
She's silly goose, that one.
That was pretty awesome.
Silly goose. Oh, here we go, ladies and gentlemen. We're gonna have our amateur 140 women coming on up, and our amateur 160-pound women coming on up. In our lane number 2, we have Tasha the Wolf Whalen, who recently just won the Arnold Amateur World Championships in the 140-pound division. Today she's competing in the 160-pound division because she's a pro now, so now she can't do 140 anymore. Yep. And she's going to test her steel against some of the women in the 160 class, some of which are some women who have placed top 10 in the world at OSG. So there's actually some fantastic international talent here today in our amateur 160 division.
Absolutely.
So it's really fun to watch.
She's going to be one to watch in this heat. And, some of the people watching at home, they may have seen athletes coming up to the bar and looking at their judge and then sticking their arms overhead like this and demonstrating what their lockout position looks like. Sometimes in life, you can accrue a couple injuries. I know a lot of people at home are going to be able to understand that. And, sometimes those injuries translate to not fully being able to lock out one or both of your elbows. And so what the athletes are doing when they approach the bar like that and when they're talking to the judge is saying, hey, my left arm is a little bit wonky. My right arm can lock perfectly, but my left arm, it has this little bend right there. And so, what the judges are looking for is control at the top and demonstrating that they have achieved lockout. And lockout can look slightly different for some athletes.
Right. Here we go. We just got started with our first wave here of amateurs. We are now no longer in the novice divisions. We're getting to see some slightly more advanced athletes getting after it now. Like I mentioned in lane number 2, Tasha Wolf-Whalen is a current Arnold World Champion for the 140-pound division. It is really exciting to see her go up a class, not permanently, but just for fun today.
Yeah, it's fun to see some of these athletes, and if you've been in the sport a while, you can see these athletes growing competition to competition and getting better and better, and it's just really fun to see. If you're in the sport, the sport really has a family atmosphere. I'm not sure people that have not been in the sport recognize that this is a sport of passion and commitment and personal growth essentially, and a lot of times this is this is the primary hobby for most of these athletes because
Right.
it is something that can take a lot of time to do. It can take a lot of time to do safely, and it takes a ton of time to do well.
Well, you know, it's kind of like an age-old testament that having to do really hard things with a group of individuals tends to make great bonds. And every person that likes to do this for fun is not only probably slightly mentally unwell, but is willing to do a lot of things that are hard. And when you do that, you build some character. So it is for the most part a really fantastic environment to be in. Very rarely you're going to not have a good time, especially at shows. You're just doing your best, and especially when you have productions like this that genuinely are just trying to put on a good time for these folks.
Absolutely.
We have our second wave of non-novices competing again.
All right. So, so Alec, we're seeing different athletes approaching the bar with different kind of equipment. We may notice some people have flat shoes, other people have shoes with a heel raised, some people have belts on, some people don't. There's equipment on the elbows. Like, what's the beneficial arrangement? What is the purpose of that equipment?
Yeah, that's a really good question because there will be definitely some varying opinions on that. I'm an Olympic weightlifting coach first before I ever started coaching strongman. So at least in my opinion, I think as minimalistic is the best approach when it comes to something like this, because ultimately, even with something like elbow sleeves, if you're someone who's trying to do a power jerk or a split jerk, a lot of the time that will actually slow down the bar's ability to create elevation off the chest because it's pushing too early as you're trying to create separation. So I actually don't like things like sleeves for split jerks or power jerks. You will actually push into the bar before the bar's even left your chest, slowing down total velocity and not being able to catch it at its peak, right? So I'm a bit of a minimalist when it comes to this. Now, if you're a traditional strongman and you're gonna, you're gonna belt clean or do a continental clean, and you're gonna do things like push pressing, sure, have your big belt on the front, rest that bar on there so there's little as muscular tension on the body as possible, so you're really just working mechanically and not through muscles. And then use your elbow sleeves. But if you have the ability to learn the techniques of, let's say, proper power cleaning and split jerking or power jerking, I think is a massive advantage to being a bit of a minimalist when it comes to your equipment, because it's just less things in the way.
It's true, and I think my opinion on it is pretty darn close to the same. I do think some of the equipment can hinder on occasion. Again, this is a repetition event, so we're looking at athletes having to acquire as many repetitions as possible. And if somebody's capable of 9 or 10 or even 13 repetitions, a lot of times in a piece of equipment like a belt is actually going to hinder their ability to breathe into the stomach and manage that energy expenditure. And so that can hinder some athletes. Lane 3 had a gorgeous power clean and push jerk. That is wonderful.
So lane number 1, we have top 10 in the world, 73 kilo athlete she's actually my athlete who I coach. She's doing the power clean and power jerks for now. Lane number 2, we have her athlete, Bailey, out of Utah. Both athletes out of the Sweaty Pig. And lane number 3, we have our friend named Craig, who is also coached. Craig just gave me the look because he'd give me a squat jerk.
That was perfect.
He's going to do it. Craig right now is out of Sacramento. He's also coached by Ben Claridad, the former Team USA member in weightlifting. He's a teammate of Sheila, who watched earlier.
I'm excited to see some weightlifters getting into the sport.
Yeah.
That's very fun.
I mean, their ability to cycle is just incredible. You kind of see that experience. And and then lane number 4, we have a dungeon member with a fantastic powerful clean and power jerk. We have a bunch of really just great weightlifting technique going out here right now.
Yeah, that's Kevin in lane 4. He is a powerhouse. He's very strong, and he's quite a dynamic athlete. He's going to be really fun to watch.
Yeah, Craig with a fantastic performance out here. really cycling reps quite well. And lane number 1, very proud of my girl as well. The Rhythm with the Tism, the Sweaty Pig athletes. Love it.
So we have a couple Sweaty Pig athletes out here.
The Sweaty Pig Gym, I believe, has brought 15 athletes to this competition from Salt Lake City, Utah. I believe they brought 15.
Do they rent a bus, or how do they do that?
I think they all flew together.
That's fantastic.
But they really come deep. They roll deep. The woman in lane number 1 is actually part owner of the gym. Her partner is Connor Gordon, who will be competing in the Pro-Am division in the heavyweights. He's the largest man out in the audience right now that we can see.
Yep.
But yeah, the Sweaty Pig is, the sister gym of Dungeon, and they roll deep. They really roll deep.
That's wonderful. I love that.
Yeah. Oh, here we go. In lane number 4, we have our boy Connor, a Dungeon Strength member and coached by Lucas Hatton.
Nice. In lane number 3, we have Matt. He is a pretty experienced strongman competitor. He's been at the Rainier before, and I've seen him competing at Washington Strongest Apple. I've seen him competing many different places, and just an overall fun guy to chat with. He's is a very relaxed demeanor, and he really exemplifies like getting out here and just enjoying the process of competition.
Right. And that really is ultimately the things that are going to help the most with any young and developing athletes who are trying to compete in a sport like this, is just consistency and just having a good time. Because ultimately, if you are trying to get to the top, and whatever the top is, and whatever your metric is for quote-unquote the top, ultimately just going about it really slow and patient is ultimately the best way to do it.
Absolutely. And then in lane 1, we have Annalise. Annalise has been doing strongman for a couple years, but if I'm not mistaken, she's a very young athlete. I want to say she's
16.
I think she might be a little older than that, but
is she?
She's been doing strongman for a couple years.
I'm fairly certain she's in high school. At least.
I think she's in college in Ellensburg, Washington at Central, but she's been doing competition for a couple years now, and she's going to be one to watch in the next decade, we'll say, because she has a long, successful career ahead of her if she chooses to continue with the sport. She has excellent movement patterns. She's awesome at getting coached and like making adjustments to those movement patterns. So.
I believe she's coached by Saul, one of the owners of Dungeon.
Yes, sir. Yep. All right. Looks like we have
weight changes.
Yep. Some weights getting moved
around. So we're
around.
going down to 2 lanes now. I believe all our female athletes are done. So I believe we're just finishing off with the male athletes now.
Excellent. Moving those 2 bars to center. Yeah, and we want to take a moment to thank our loaders and spotters. A lot of the people that you see on the screen are actually volunteering their time. They're part of the community. A lot of them are members at Dungeon Strength RX in Auburn, Washington. And, you know, this is a sport where it becomes a hobby, and then that hobby turns into more of a lifestyle. And, you know, I could go on and on, but I just want to take a moment to thank all of our loaders and spotters today.
Yeah, it is genuinely, from top to bottom, a labor of love. So we very much appreciate all those people that do have that same love for something like this we do, because it isn't easy. You know, we're looking at, you know, over 20,000 pounds worth of material that were brought in to this facility yesterday for all of this just to happen, and everyone who did it most definitely was not getting paid. So, you know, it's everyone who genuinely cares to make sure that this show goes on without a hitch, ideally as little as possible. Like gentlemen like Ryan Terry here, a big, beautiful man with the mic. And yeah, we're just extremely thankful to everyone that was willing to come out and help, and is helping right now. Here we go. We have another Dungeon member here competing in lane number 3. We should be in our men's 105s, I believe, in the open. We should have Nate Lugstorm right now, our buddy Nate. Nate is a med school student, actually, who I believe is just finishing up. Or going off to residency, I believe. Yep, I actually just spoke with him the other day. He's getting ready for getting ready to move for residency. I don't recall exactly where he's headed, but I'll tell you where the bar is headed. It's headed directly up. Yeah. Nate has a really fantastic pull in his power clean. He does a great job of accelerating past the knees and keeping it close as he then finishes vertically. And his power trick's really proficient. You know, Nate's clearly prepared for this event. Absolutely. He has a very efficient power clean into push jerk, and you know, I've seen him growing as an athlete over the last several years, but this is the best form I've seen him in. I'm actually quite impressed with the technical side of his movement right now. And I do know that he had a little bit of a weight cut yesterday, and it seems like he's recovered quite well from that. Yeah, Nate's been competing for a little bit of time now, and he's pretty proficient and more importantly, consistent in his performances. And it's a real pleasure to watch him grow over the last few years. And look at Nate just sneaking in that last rep. Fantastic job, Nate. Well done. That was very well done from Nate. Yeah, he got that last repetition, and you can tell he's breathing a bit hard right now, and telling his fellow competitor Pavlo to, hey, get out there. I put the number up. Why don't you come try to chase it? Right. Trying to pull up the score sheets here. So next up, it looks like we're going to have Pavlo and CJ in the 231 amateur men class. And sorry, do you happen to know the weight that they are lifting for repetitions? Right now, it's looking like it is 245 pounds. I could be incorrect. I am having a very difficult time with the score sheet right now, and that it's not working. So I'm trying to figure that out. All right, well, somewhere between 245 and 255.
And these athletes are just moving this bar like it's nothing. You know, we see CJ in lane 2 giving that push press. He's got plenty of shoulder power, clearly. Taking his time, he's managing his energy well. That's a very good example of pacing and making sure that he can get as many repetitions in as possible. And this kind of event, a lot of times you want to be the tortoise, not the hare. You know, you want to come out and make sure you can manage that energy well. And Pablo over in lane 1 is doing a really good job of getting those repetitions, minimizing his time under tension. But you can see he's stepping back from the bar. That's going to burn up a little bit of time. So I'm curious to see which one of these two actually comes out ahead in this heat.
Right. And looking at the weights here, for this class, it's actually 255. And we'll see here what the scores are in just a moment for this class.
Wow, CJ squeaked in that last repetition. That could have been the difference for the heat and could have been the difference for the class.
And CJ is another fantastic athlete out of the Sweaty Pig in Salt Lake City, Utah. Bailey,
a good athlete.
Yeah, Bailey out of the first heat there that was competing with Jenny, my athlete, is actually his wife. She did quite well in her division as well.
Excellent.
Yeah, we actually have 3 Sweaty Pig athletes right over here getting lined up, ready to go. They really came rolling deep.
That's awesome
for the Rainier Classic.
That's awesome. As much as I would want to do like, you know, a gym v gym kind of thing. You know, it looks like they have fantastic athletes, and I think it'd be kind of fun to have that banter. But I can't help but respect that they're bringing 15 athletes, several states over to a big competition like this. That shows the level. I mean, that probably shows a lot of the level of coaching and a lot of the level of understanding of the sport in getting that many athletes prepared for something this big.
Yeah, and you know, it's a fantastic gym out there. I have 6 athletes I coach 6 of their athletes over there myself, and they have great athletes even coming out of it. So that's where athletes like Kevin Ferris trains out of permanently. That's his home gym.
I wasn't aware of that.
There's quite a few pros and international folks as well out of that gym. And Connor Gordon, the owner, is often calling Dungeon his sister gym because, frankly, they love the Dungeon. They love this meet. Here we go right now in our second heat of we're actually at the 120 kilo men right now.
I believe you are right. It looks like in lane 1 we have Zachary Hash, who is one of the world's strongest firefighters.
That's right.
In lane 2 we have Tanner Jacobson,
another Sweaty Pig athlete in Tanner.
All right.
Now, both of these gentlemen are pretty well experienced. You know, obviously you just mentioned that our boy Zachary is one of the strongest firemen in the world, having competing at World's Strongest Firemen. Tanner, I know, has been doing strongman for a few years now and has coached quite well. I believe he's coached by Jenny, who was competing in the earlier lanes.
Absolutely, and they're moving 275 like it's no big deal.
Yeah, what's really... Actually, right now, they're actually at 315.
Oh, they're at 315?
They're at 315,
I misspoke. Yeah. Well, it's
even better.
That's even more impressive.
Yeah. No, you can tell both these guys clearly working on their pacing, like you mentioned, and are doing a really fantastic job of just sticking to it and not getting a little too excited.
Yep, managing that energy expenditure.
Tanner knows he's done. Oh, and Zach nearly with the finish.
Oh, that's a tough one. That's always a tough one. You know, it's always good to swing for the fence in that last couple seconds and make sure that you give it everything you got, because between events, you're going to have, you know, somewhere between 20 minutes to an hour and a half to recover. So those athletes are probably going to be headed backstage, taking a moment to breathe, taking a moment to process the event, what just happened, and then, you know, refueling a little bit, getting some water, getting some electrolytes, getting some carbs, having a little bit of protein. And again, in lane 2, for those of you watching closely, we have another athlete checking in with his judge. That's Saul Peterson. And he's saying, hey, you know, one of my elbows is a little, you know, little wonky.
It looks like we have Luke Young in lane number 2, and in lane number 3, Jared Collins, another athlete out of the Sweaty Pig.
Excellent.
Looks like Jared Collins went for a bit of a power clean there, just missed. He probably should transfer over to his full clean. Save some energy. You know, at the end of the day, you know, 315 pounds for repetitions in an amateur show is, for a non-heavyweight division, is actually quite rare. This is a very heavy competition.
Absolutely, you know, and I think this heat is kind of demonstrating how impressive that last heat was. Really.
Heat 1, right.
You know, both of those athletes were just knocking them out. This is not a small amount of weight.
Yeah, you know, certainly, like Jared Collins there, for example, is definitely getting the height that he needs to get under this bar. but he really should just switch over from doing deadlifts right now to a full clean. You know, if you want to win over Saul Peterson's heart, that's exactly what you have to do. Is just have some fun like that.
Yeah, that was a fantastic. You know, a lot of times athletes are going to be out there, and you know, if they can't get the repetition, you know, in the designed event, we'll say they just like to have some fun. Maybe you know, get the crowd involved a little bit, and it looks like that's exactly what Jared Collins was doing, was hitting a couple deadlifts and saying, you know what, hey, I'm going to deadlift this because this is actually an impressive deadlift weight for a lot of people.
Right. So as of right now, Zachary Hash is still in the lead for the men's 120 kilo class with 5 repetitions. Tanner's in second with 3 repetitions. Both of those gentlemen that we just witnessed zeroed the event. Right now, we have Trevor Dahl and Ryan Nutter in lane number 3. So Trevor Dahl in lane number 2, and Ryan Nutter in lane number 3.
Excellent. So we have some athletes going for that continental clean. What's the major difference between a normal clean, we'll say, one that maybe somebody from a CrossFit background will be aware of, or like a football background, and then a continental clean? What is the difference there?
So interestingly enough, the continental clean is actually the more historical lift. That was actually the original way that folks in Olympic weightlifting would lift the barbell, traditionally speaking. The clean got its name in that it's a lot cleaner version of a continental, so that's why we call it a clean. The main difference being is that with a clean, after you make contact with your hip or upper quad, you then do not remake contact with the body at all until it's in your front rack. Whereas with the continental, you will bring it up to your hip, you'll probably have another jump to your belly, and then from there you do a dip and drive and try to catch in a traditional front rack.
Excellent. Yeah, so we see both athletes hitting what's called a continental clean and press. Again, like Alec mentioned, it is contacting somewhere on the torso as you come up. And, oh, did he get that repetition? Did you happen to see that?
Yeah, Saul gave it to him. Yeah, it wasn't intentional. I think he got a little excited. And what Zach was referencing there was, you know, one of the rules of this competition is do not spike the equipment. Do not spike. And he's getting a friendly warning. He's getting a friendly warning from Lucas Hatton now. Do not spike our brand new weightlifting bars. But he was just having a good time. But that is one of the rules. You know, you cannot have intentional or purposeful slamming of the bar just because, frankly, it's really expensive. And we want to have it as long as possible.
Yeah, and it can, you know, it can damage the equipment for the next competitor, which can disadvantage the athletes that are going to follow on that bar. And it can create, you know, it makes a different condition for the athletes, and you know, we want to preserve we'll say, fairness of the sport as much as possible.
Right. In lane number 2 here, we have James Moore. In lane number 3, we have Nathan Heddick. So it looks like Heddick here is pretty competent with his continental clean.
Yeah,
he's transitioning pretty well. It's looked like he might even be doing a mixed grip on his continental, which is and then allowing a bit of a switch. Let's see how he is. Yeah, he's doing a mixed grip and then switching once he makes contact with the body. Yeah, this is clearly an experienced amateur athlete.
Absolutely. So
Saul's really making him hold that. There we go. Great
yeah, he's got to demonstrate that control.
And it looks like right now for James Moore, this is maybe a weight that's probably closer to a true maximum for him. I believe he's gotten 1 rep so far. But, you know, you'll see that with a weight like this and for repetitions, you know, this is quite heavy. This is very heavy weight. And
absolutely.
Some folks might get 1, some folks might 0. But, you know, then we get athletes like Nathan here, who's a little more experienced, and it looks like he got at least 3 reps.
Excellent. So you were mentioning that the original kind of what we would call continental clean, that was the original way to lift the bar in weightlifting. Did it have a different name?
It was just called the Continental.
The Continental.
It was just the Continental, right. It wasn't referred to as a Continental clean. And the term clean came on into thereafter when individuals started trying different techniques in order to get to the body or the front rack more efficiently, and that's how we ended up getting the clean. It's a clean version.
Excellent. So we see all these different techniques. One that I have not seen is a split clean.
No, we haven't seen that yet. We haven't seen that. And you know what? It wouldn't surprise me, because ultimately, if there is any advantage at all to a split clean versus just doing a traditional power clean or full clean or even a continental, It is slightly easier with individuals with really bad front racks. So because it allows a little bit more give to lean back, because you're in a split position now, in order to find a rack and then recover. So that's actually the one kind of sort of advantage that maybe someone could use in theory. Otherwise, I think you're a goofy goober if you're out here doing that.
Absolutely.
And that's fine. You know, I get it. You want to have some fun. So right now we're having a bit of a weight change. It looks like we're going up to the amateur heavyweight men, the men's amateur open. The first athlete out here will have Jordan Reimers, who is a dungeon strength athlete coached by Aaron Murray. And by proxy, he is my grand athlete. He's under the RP11 umbrella. Jordan has just gotten better and better over the last few years. He's become extremely consistent with his performances, and I'm really looking forward to see him do this because I believe Jordan's doing full clean and split jerk.
He has really grown in the last several years, and he's just a fun guy to like chat with and watch train with. He's very nice. So there's that full clean that you're talking about. Looks like he's steadying himself on the rack. Nice
and
split.
A great split jerk.
Yep.
Stamp of approval from your grand coach. Good job, Jordan. No, his clean really has gone better, but it's a little off balance.
Yeah, and sometimes
now, why do you think that happened there, Zach? What did you see that might make an athlete fall over in the bottom of a clean there?
Just a loss of balance. It looks like the bar kind of came back on him a little bit, and you can see the adjustment right there. The bar was a little bit forward in the catch that time. I do think that these bars that they're lifting on are a little bit more whippy than most of the athletes are used to, and they're handling enough weight that the whip really does start to matter a lot. And that can throw some athletes out of their groove if they're not used to it.
Yeah, you know, this barbell that we're using here are IWF-approved Olympic weightlifting bars. And most folks, if I had to guess, were training at a traditional strongman gym where they probably might even be using power bars, for example. And not getting used to that whip is egregious. You know, it's an egregious new stimuli that they might not be used to. And just to make a correction to myself, you were correct. It was 275 in the previous class. This is 315 now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so... that whip can really mess with people too, because we have, on these bars, we have 315 pounds moving around in a way that you may not be used to at arm's length overhead.
Right, and that's it, the oscillation to what's referred to as is incredible. But here we go real quick in our second heat of the open men. In lane number 2, we have a Terran Showerbow, and in lane number 3, another dungeon strength athlete in Axel McCrum. Now, Axel is an athlete of Lucas Hatton, so, I'd expect some good clean and press technique out of him. I'd love to see what Taryn is going to do as well.
Yeah, and Axel is another one of those up-and-coming athletes that's fun to watch. He's been in a couple competitions at this point. First time I think I saw him was at Static Monsters at Lake Washington CrossFit last year.
Yes, that was his first show.
Okay. Yeah, so I was there coaching an athlete of mine and doing a little bit of lifting as well.
Sure.
Just for some funsies. And, I think that Axel could go quite a way in this sport. He has plenty of potential. Yeah. And it seems like he's very hungry as well.
Yeah, this is his third show ever. He's on his 4th repetition, by the way, now at 315 pounds, and that's really fantastic. I fully expect that to be somewhere in the top 5 of the class, because, again, 315, even for a heavyweight class, for reps is quite difficult. And for his third show ever, actually be very proud of himself. Taryn also put in a very valiant effort in there, so Taryn should also walk away very proud of himself as well.
Excellent. So the next 2 athletes we're going to have are going to be in lane 2, Samuel Sheether,
the powerlifting coach.
Oh, I wasn't aware.
Sam Sheether is one of the best powerlifting coaches in the country. His brother is the highest total for any 19-year-old ever, I believe, who he coaches. Sam Sheether himself is also a very accomplished powerlifter. I believe he's in the 900 pounds of the deadlift, 800-plus pound squatter, benches over 500 pounds. Very strong guy, and he's throwing his hands now at strongman.
Excellent. And then in lane 3, we have a Chance Dolahite.
Another dungeon strength athlete. And wow, what a proficient continental clean and push press out of Sam.
That is a lot of power. I mean, he's moving that bar. That does not look like 315 pounds when he has it in his hands.
His technique is precise. We're lucky enough to be at Sam's direct profile view here, and watching his dip and drive mechanics, he's doing a fantastic job of keeping his hips over his heels, and not only the reception of the clean, but also in the starting of the push press. So he's clearly practiced.
Absolutely. doing an excellent job.
And, simply told, and I don't think this would be something that Sam would even disagree with either, he's incredibly small for an open class athlete. And, he's choosing to stop here, which I think he knows that the other two athletes might not be as proficient in the clean and press. So it seems like he's trying to save some energy.
He just busted some some repetitions outside. Anybody else coming?
Yeah.
Anybody else? No? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just going to save it for later. It's cool.
He did a very good job there. Watching Sam is going to be interesting over the next couple of years. I know he wants to do the open class, but I tell you what, I think he'd be a real monster at 105.
Absolutely.
Or even 120, depending on the future of that class.
That was very impressive from Samuel.
Yeah, Sam really wrecked house there. I'm looking forward to see what his scores are in a few moments. So far, the leading repetitions is Axel with 3 repetitions.
Wow. Very nice. And that was, right? I mean,
yeah.
Samuel just did he get 4 and shut it down?
4, yeah.
He put on a clinic on that. That is quite impressive to do that in a short time frame and then just say, okay, I don't think anybody else is going to catch that. So next up in lane 2, we have David Watson. And in lane 3, we have a Thomas Zaya.
Thomas Zaya is a former member of Dungeon Strength, currently lives and resides in Illinois. He trains at Surge New Levels, a powerlifting gym out in Illinois, a fantastic gym. It's also where Inez Carrasquillo trains out of as well.
I wasn't aware that they got to train at the same gym.
Yeah, they're at the same gym now, yeah. He's also an athlete of Lucas Hatton. Thomas is a newer to strongman, pretty decent power lifter, and also pretty fantastic with his dip and drive on overhead events.
Excellent. Yeah, I was sad to see Tomas leave when he had to move because he's such a fun guy to be around in the gym. Just great energy and a strong guy. I'm excited to see his deadlift later this weekend. Yeah,
Tomas just did, I believe, 2 or 3 reps and just bowed out. He knew exactly what he needed to do to get himself some good points and stop there. So that is the conclusion of our open class men. Are we done? Yeah, right. So as a conclusion of our open class men here. With that being said, let's see here. Trying to figure out the stream issue.
We have a little update. So again, a huge thank you out to these spotters and loaders. Everybody's getting out.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, in just a few moments here, we'll be getting started in the next event at the 4th annual Rainier Classic. This event will be sandbag to shoulder. Athletes will have a certain amount of weight right in front of them. They'll have about 60 seconds. They'll wait for the down command, and they will count the repetitions for the amount of repetitions they received on that sandbag to shoulder event. But, before we get started on things officially, I wanted to take a moment to thank the sponsors of this fantastic event. Going down the list here, I want to thank Gym Daddy, providing us a sponsorship for the Rainier Classic. Obviously, we're a huge fan of them and their ability to make us fantastic T-shirts and curate the designs and make all these athletes look quite professional. This fantastic polo included. There it is. So thank you very much to Gym Daddy for making these shirts. Puget Sound Pizza for providing not only monetary benefit to this show, but also pizza and good food and all those fun things and vouchers for athletes to enjoy. So thank you so much to Puget Sound Pizza. Looks like Cerberus as well for providing the equipment used at this contest. Cerberus is a manufacturer of some of the best strongman equipment made in the world. So we want to take a moment and thank them for providing fantastic equipment for the Rainier Classic. And I believe this is their 3rd or 4th time even of providing great equipment for the Rainier. We wanted to thank Higher Power and Strength for providing a sponsorship as well to the show, giving us fantastic shirts and just a great message overall for athletes to enjoy. We also have Jack Squatch Supplements. Thank you so much for sponsoring the show with supplements and vitamins for athletes to use before and after the competition. So thank you so much, Jack Squatch. Maverick Sports and Spine by Dr. John Rehabilitation. Dr. John is a chiropractor that works out of Dungeon Strength. So thank you so much, John, for providing us with tools and utilities for the show. We very much value very much Dr. John. So thank you so much. And also, the #1 sponsor, as far as I'm concerned, Dungeon Strength RX. Thank you so much, Dungeon. And also, I forgot to add here, RP11 for sponsoring the highest-ranking amateur in the Pro-Am divisions. So here we have in our lane #1, we should have Melissa Wang Yu for our sandbag to shoulder event. And our novice, we should also have a novice lightweight men. We should have, who is this gentleman here? We should have a, oh, pardon me. We find this gentleman here. He deserves his praise. Let's find this gentleman. Oh goodness. So this event's about to get started over here. All right, here we go, ladies and gentlemen. We are getting started here. What just happened? So our sandbag to shoulder event here. In lane #3, we have a novice lightweight man.
Okay, looks like we have Jacob right there. Okay. All right. So
yes, Jacob Martin in lane #3 here, and we should have Melissa Wang Yoon in lane #1.
Yes, sir. Okay, so this is an interesting event because, again, we have a time frame, we have repetitions to complete. With this particular event, what do you think is going to be a good number for a minute of work?
For 60 seconds worth of work, for someone, let's talk about the novices here, and not just quite the amateur comparisons. If they get anywhere, honestly, from, let's say, 2 to 4 reps for a true novice, I think that would be a really fantastic showing. Because even for these novice divisions here at the Rainier, it is still a somewhat challenging way. You get used to that gentleman, Jacob, is, he's huffing and puffing as he comes off here, not because he's out of shape, but because it's a very challenging event. It's a full-body taxing event.
Absolutely.
Would you like to talk to some of the techniques related to an event like this? Because there's quite a few.
Absolutely. I mean, there's so many different ways to lift it. Again, this, much like the clean and press for reps, right?
Right.
There's many ways to perform this movement. And again, it's going to be whichever way you can acquire the most repetitions inside a minute. And it's going to involve some pacing. A lot of athletes you're going to see picking the bag from the ground to the lap, and then from the lap all the way up to the shoulder. We're going to see a couple athletes struggling at the chest and trying to negotiate that position with their body in the sandbag. But in lane 3, that was an excellent repetition or an excellent example of just a solid repetitions. Picking up the bag, trying to center it, getting it on the lap. Yep, so he tried to go straight to the shoulder. He gets it on the lap, readjusts a little bit, big pop, and now he's getting it up and back, and he's got to get that elbow up to get the down call. There you go. So you know, what we're going to see in this is some athletes are going to actually be shouldering the bag, and they're not going to demonstrate proper control.
Right. And what does that mean, proper control? What exactly are these judges looking for?
Yeah, so the judges are going to be looking for the bag on the shoulder. They're going to be looking for about half of the mass or half of the volume behind the shoulder and half in front of the shoulder. If the bag is going to be sitting on someone's chest and they're not having that kind of 50-50 distribution of the bag, that does not demonstrate control in a shouldered position. Additionally, if the athlete has the bag on the shoulder and their elbow is down, if that shoulder is lower than the other shoulder, it's also not demonstrating control because they're kind of just holding it in a position that's compromised. They want to be in a strong, controlled position, demonstrating complete control.
Right.
So often that's going to, you know, what they need is half the bag in front of their shoulder, half the bag behind.
So
is number one.
50-50 split.
Yep. And the second criteria is going to be the shoulder that has the bag is going to be a little bit higher than the other shoulder. If we see someone with the bag down here, it's not really demonstrating control so much as someone about to lose the bag.
Right, right.
All right, so we have our next heat. Lane 4 is off to a pretty swift start. Oh, had a little bit of lost control right there. That was a great example of what we were just talking about.
Right.
When you get that bag to the shoulder, a lot of times athletes will think they have control, and then the shoulder will start to dip, and it'll roll right out of the arm. That's why it's so important to get that shoulder a little bit higher and try to get the bag on the center line, like between your feet is where you want that to be. If it's over only 1 foot, it's going to be pulling you over that foot, because for some of these athletes today, they're going to be lifting bags from the ground to the shoulder that are heavier than their actual body weight.
Right, right. And what we'll end up seeing later on, too, is a bit more of what I would describe as like the higher end display of potential in this event in the Pro-Am divisions, because they're doing a Trump style, which is different than what's happening right now, as we have athletes going something for standard weight for reps. And the Pro-Am divisions will be quite heavy options. There'll be 3 options for these athletes in all Pro-Am divisions. And we have to see varying techniques for that, because as the bags get heavier and probably more importantly larger, your technique is more than likely going to change.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, you know, it's going to change from, you know, from the ground to the shoulder. Like the entirety of the movement can change. There's so many variables here. Most of what we've seen so far is athletes pushing the bag forward, grabbing the center line and having the bag parallel with their spine. But, you know, as the bags get larger, we may see some athletes electing to lay it on its side and having the bag perpendicular to their body and then going from the lap up to the shoulder and swinging it across their face.
Right. You see mostly open class men successful with that technique. I think it's due to the broadness of their chest to allow a bit of a literal shelf for them to make that transition.
Absolutely. And I've played a lot with both of the techniques, and I think one of the biggest factors is actually the dimensions of the bag and the dimensions of the athlete. Both of those have major contributing factors to which technique is most effective for them.
Right. Now here we have in lane number 3 a fantastic young man. I believe he's 16 years old, out of the Sweaty Pig as well, from Utah. In lane number 3, strong young boy who's really looking forward to kind of advancing throughout his strongman career.
Excellent. So we got a couple repetitions. Lane 4 is doing a great job of demonstrating that horizontal bag technique. You can see that the bag is perpendicular to his spine as he goes to the lap, and he's getting a lot of hip drive, popping it up and swinging the bag in front of his face, getting it to the shoulder, and just racking up the repetitions with this technique. Again, it's athlete independent for that technique, and sometimes athletes will change their technique depending on the dimensions of the bag. So that's one of the fun things about strongman is things are somewhat standardized, but when we are dealing with something like the sandbag to shoulder, your technique may change. Even if you're the same athlete, your technique may change depending on the weight that you're lifting.
Yeah, you know, one of the styles that I personally am partial towards is the longer or upright style. Some people refer to that as a Japanese style. And I think, yeah, I've heard that term used quite a bit of times.
I've never heard that one. That's interesting.
When it's nice and upright. And, you know, I'm partial to that, especially when things get heavier, because what it essentially does is, now, the pick off the ground is slightly more difficult because there's a lot more space the bag has to clear before you can sit down. But once you're fully seated and lapped with that bag, I find it's already halfway up her torso. So essentially just standing and popping and pushing up through the bottom makes it a so much easier transition from, let's say, lap to shoulder. I really am a fan of that style.
Absolutely. I do think that if I had one style to pick, it would be that same style, that Japanese style, as you called it. And, you know, typically if I'm doing some sandbag to shoulder, they're a little taller than they are. Like, it's a little, how do I say it? It's a longer bag, and so I want it to sit tall in the lap. So when I drive, I can get that center of mass up to the shoulder with a little bit less of having to actually lift it and more of giving it a little bump and then allowing it to roll over my shoulder.
That's exactly what gentleman in lane number 3 is doing, who I believe is also coached by Lucas Haddon.
Nice. And then in lane 1, we have Rochelle Killian working with that bag. Got it to the lap and up to the chest and just struggling to bump it up just a little higher. Taking a moment to regroup. Oh, and so in lane 3, you know, we saw the bag kind of come up and it stayed on the center line. That's one of the tricky parts is when do you commit to actually going away from the center line and getting it to the shoulder? If you were coaching someone, what would you tell them?
So honestly, what I would say with a bag that small, the Japanese style is not advantageous because when you're in that lap position, it's not that much higher than it would be if it was horizontal. So if that's the case, I do think you'll have ultimate greater control horizontally and transitioning quickly over to the shoulder. So I think it's one of the few times I'd recommend not that style, just because the bag isn't long enough to really take advantage.
Yeah, and it is, you know, again, the dimensions of the bag matter. We see some of our floaters just popping that back up.
Our handlers are so strong.
Yeah, they really are. They really are. So, you know, one of the loaders, Dustin Tubbs out there in the black shirt that, you know, caught my eye as he was just popping that bag up into his lap. He's actually competing in this afternoon session with the pro middleweights.
He actually did drop out, but he was going to do that. He did drop out.
Okay, I was unaware.
Yeah, that's of today.
Okay.
But we do have in lanes number 1 and 2 coming on out Vivian Liao and a Shelby Duncan. Shelby was the athlete. She got 6 repetitions on that barbell clean and press with those smooth transitions we were talking about from the power clean straight into the power jerk. And this is an event that she should be proficient at as she's dancing on the floor out there all casually.
Just having some fun.
Yeah, and I know she's nervous about this. You know, she mentioned it to me in the back, but Shelby is a true gamer, Shelby Duncan specifically, and I'm sure Vivian's going to put in a really fantastic display as well. I really love watching Shelby compete because she's very lively. You could tell she likes to lift heavy things and hit PRs. She's a classic slam bars, hit PRs type of athlete, at least in weightlifting.
Excellent. Yeah, and again, it's really fun to see some of the new athletes coming in, or some of the athletes that I haven't seen before coming from a weightlifting background. You know, years and years ago, we didn't see a lot of athletes performing jerks in general, like in any form. You know, and now it's a much more common
even just
technique.
4 years ago. Yeah. I remember I started coaching strongman just 4 years ago for the first time, and I remember so many coaches were telling me to stop teaching my athletes to split jerks. Like, oh, it's not going to work in big shows or for reps. I'm like, okay, well, we'll find out. Nah. And now the whole sport has kind of transitioned for those who can. If you can, they are. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Absolutely, and it's a skill. It's a skill. You're acquiring a skill and a technique. It is a tool. So these different techniques are tools, and if you have the right tool for the job, you can do it more effectively.
Yeah.
That's just the truth. Yeah. Like, that's how it is. And so
we got Shelby with 1 good rep. Vivian is so close to getting that rep as well in lane number 1.
Nice.
Shelby's working on her 2nd. She has a slight mistiming of the roll, but she's doing a good job. She needs to hold on to that a little longer just in case. So Shelby's also opting for that Japanese style, but again, I think with a bag that small, it's actually not as advantageous.
And Mr. Komoku in lane 4 is just pounding out repetitions with that 225-pound bag.
Yeah, he's making real light work of this, and I really like how tight he's bringing it into his body once he's in that lap position. He's fighting here in the middle, but I think he's got it.
Yep, he's just got to bump it up a little further and display control. You can see his shoulder is high and nice. He was able to control that.
A really good performance of grit out here in this heat that just passed. And now we are in the amateur divisions. We're no longer in our novice divisions. We should have our, there might be one more athlete coming on out for the women's lightweights. I believe it might be Rochelle. Actually, no, pardon me. We are now in our women's 160-pound division in lanes 1 and 2. We should be in our men's open amateur still, I believe. Or no, I believe we might be still in the novice divisions for our men's class. I'm having a difficult time finding that on our sheet, pardon me.
I believe, well, it looks like we have a Masters.
Masters, that's what it is.
A
Thank you.
Masters athlete out there. All right, we got some athletes talking to the judges real quick, just clarifying a couple things. You know, and it's important to know exactly what the judges are looking for. Even though there is a rules meeting before we have the competition, sometimes you need to clarify something with the judge. You know, we saw that in the first event with athletes talking about their overhead position. Maybe they have, you know, an elbow that isn't locking out all the way. And in this kind of event, you know, it's good to just touch bases with your coach, especially if you or touch bases with your judge, especially if you have a little bit of extra time, just to make sure you know exactly what they're looking for, because it would be a shame to do all of that work and not get the down and then be under load and say, well, where do you need me?
Right.
You know?
In lanes 1 and 2, we should have athletes Katie Moore in lane 1. I believe we have Alicia Saragosa in lane number 2.
All right, in lane number 4, that is a swift repetition. There's 2 already knocked out for him.
Yeah, this gentleman in lane number 4 is really doing a fantastic job here in getting that right to the shoulder.
Just busting it out. Very swift. It'll be interesting to see how his pace evolves through the rest of the minute, because he's keeping an excellent pace right now. He needs to hang on to that pace and keep going.
Yeah, he's motoring right now.
Absolutely.
Really, his pop in the middle is actually fantastic from lap to shoulder.
Absolutely. Taking a second to breathe, recoup. He definitely has the strength to get a couple more repetitions. The question is, does he have the time?
Well, he's pacing really well. Looks like he's a little bit out of gas. Let's see how he handles this here. Now he's going to have to start to fight in the middle here. Oh, just in the nick of time.
Excellent work from Brian in lane 3, and then from a Mr. Shuddy in lane 4. They both got that down in the last 3 seconds.
They both fought hard for that. That was really fun to watch. And our next grouping looks like we have Bailey. We should have Bailey in lane number 1, it looks like. And we should have, well, right now our score sheets are not in order, so it's a little hard for me to tell who's in. But I know for a fact Bailey's in lane number 1. She's another athlete out of Salt Lake City, Utah, the Sweaty Pig. Bailey got 2 repetitions on the previous event. Right now we might be looking at Amanda Letty in lane number 2, but it's hard for me to see based on these score sheets.
All right. All right, so we got Arlo in lane 3, one of our 200-pound men amateur athletes. Getting that bag up to the lap, going up quick, kind of contacts the head a little bit, trying to get that bag off to the side. And again, that can be one of the challenging things about this event, is actually negotiating the bag around the head. You know, we have different styles between lane 3 and 4. You know, we have Dick Gale over in lane 4. And you can see that Dick is using the horizontal bag technique, while Arlo in lane 3 is using that Japanese style.
Right. And again, both have their advantages, depending on the athlete's proficiency and strength, frankly. Bailey is really grinding out some reps here in lane number 1. They both have 10 seconds now to get at least one more rep. Looks like Arlo's opting to stop. Bailey's trying to struggle that last rep. Can she get it in time? And it looks like she just lost it.
That's a tough one. You know, but in that last couple seconds, you gotta swing for the fence.
Well,
you gotta swing for the fence.
You're here now.
Yeah, one repetition is going to can potentially separate many points, many athletes. So, you know, when you're in that last couple seconds, you really gotta try for that last rep.
And we are right now in lane number 1. We have Tasha Wolf-Whalen and Jenny Draper in lane number 2. There's going to be a sick battle between those two here. Jenny being top 10 in the world in the 73 kilo division, and Tasha being the Arnold Amateur World Champion in the 64 division. So we're going to see a really fun battle between the 2 pros here.
And I know that weight is not very heavy for either of those
it's
women.
Not.
They're going to be tossing this bag. We might see people going straight from the ground to shoulder. Looks like they're picking a good pace.
Yep.
They both are.
They're both on reps too
advanced
already.
athletes. They're very knowledgeable and know exactly how to game this. So it looks like they're both taking a little bit of a strategy where they're not actually rushing. They're taking a moment. They're picking it. They're getting everything right. No wasted effort. No wasted energy. Just doing their best to be as efficient as possible.
It looks like Tasha has a bit of a lead on Jenny. Jenny had to wait a little longer on one of her calls by the judge. So it looks like we have near a tie. These women are on pace with each other for an incredible amount of repetitions.
Absolutely. And then, you know, in lane 3 we have Matt, and in lane 4 we have Kevin. Both of them just busting out repetitions as well. We have Matt going with a kind of a modified horizontal technique. And we have Kevin going with that vertical Japanese style.
I think we have another potential tie out of lanes 1 and 2. They both tied on the first event as well. Ooh. We might see some tiebreakers this weekend in that class.
I hope we do. I hope we do.
Which I'm not going to say what it is, but we do have a tiebreaker event.
Either.
But it is fantastic.
Yeah, when I found out what the tiebreaker was, I was hoping for a tie.
Yeah, I
in
really
at least
hope
one of the divisions.
Yeah.
And if you want to find out what the tiebreaker is, you just got to stay tuned.
Stay tuned. It's a really cool weekend. And guess what? It's free. Watch the show.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, you know, if you are watching us, please share it with your friends. It really actually makes a massive difference for the sponsors and for the show in general to get as many eyes as we possibly can. So please, if it just takes a few seconds, just share the link on your Instagram, your stories, or Facebook, whatever you use. MySpace, LinkedIn, you know. Put it in your Tinder profile. I don't care. Just get people to watch it.
Wherever. Did you have a MySpace?
Of course, I did have a MySpace.
Me too.
Yeah, it was a good time. It was a big deal who was in your top 8. There's a lot of fights over that.
Dude, yeah. When it was top 4, oh boy, man. It's a bloodbath. You lose friendships over that.
You genuinely did. So yeah, another tie. 9 reps for Tasha, 9 reps for Jenny.
Awesome.
Here we go.
In lane 4, we have Connor just busting out repetitions.
Connor and Craig in lane number 3. We're going to see a long battle all weekend between Craig in lane 3 and Connor in lane 4. Those two are very experienced 200-pound athletes, very explosive. You know, Connor throws hammer in college. Craig is a CrossFit coach out of Sacramento, California. Both these gentlemen are fit, explosive, and experienced.
That is wonderful technique from Connor, actually. Notice that on that last repetition, when he's getting hung up on his body, when he's positioning it on his torso, if he has to bump it, he's keeping his hips a bit forward and making sure that he can maintain contact with the bag and his torso, working it up. And not just working it up, but getting a good drive and then getting under the bag.
They have 10 seconds. Can they get one more? It looks like Craig's going to go for it now.
Ooh, this is where you got to swing for the fence.
Oh,
yep,
not enough time.
Didn't have the time.
Great performance out of both athletes in Craig and Connor in lanes 3 and 4. Fantastic. We'll take a look at their repetitions soon enough as well.
Excellent. And a huge shout out to the loaders and volunteers out here shuttling these bags around. It is not an easy job, and oftentimes it is thankless, but it is it's a labor of love.
Yeah, it is every single, and the thing is we know every single person here helping out, and we know how much they care about the gym, the sport, and just making sure things go smoothly. And it is genuinely harder to help out at a strongman show than it is to compete.
Absolutely. I could not agree more, because, you know, while you're preparing, I would say it's about the same work for either putting on a show or competing in a show.
Yeah.
The only difference is when you are competing in a show, you spread the work out over 8 or 12 weeks.
Right.
But when you're putting on the show, or when you're doing, when you're helping with the loading or moving equipment, all of that work is within a day or two.
Exactly.
And it just demolishes you. You know, the athletes are doing the events once each. A lot of these loaders will be doing a variation of the event 10 or 20 times.
Yeah. And quickly to announce, in lane number 3 here, we have our boy Nate Lundstrom coming out here, putting on a really good performance at Sandbag to shoulder. Nate had 5 repetitions on the previous event as well, so Nate seems to be pretty well conditioned right now.
Absolutely. He's looking really sharp. He's I can tell that he's been dieting, he's been working hard, and he's in the best form I've ever seen him in.
Yeah, I completely agree. He has the reserves to keep going for a full minute, and that's maybe a new feeling for him, because he's kicking ass right now with that 250-pound bag.
He's doing fantastic, and just an awesome guy. He's, at the gym, he does a lot of work with the adaptive athletes and with the special needs powerlifting team that works out at Dungeon Strength.
Great performance out of Nate there. He should be very proud of that.
And for those astute observers, he actually used a slightly different technique.
He did?
He was going the horizontal technique, but instead of swinging in front of the face, he was going directly up and kind of moving from the hip straight up to the shoulders, swinging it a slightly different direction.
I actually prefer that style when it comes to the horizontal approach. A lot of folks like that crossbody. I actually don't like it because, in my opinion, it takes more time than required. You're going to see CJ here does the style that I recommend, and which is the same side that you lift up to, you just pop it right to that shoulder. Watch him do that right there. Bang. Oh, he went crossbody. He changed techniques. We worked on that in Utah together. He tried to go back. Way to make me look bad. Oh, there he goes.
Oh, well, I mean, it's hard to say that he's making you look bad because he's busting out repetitions right now.
I guess he's doing okay. No, CJ's doing a fantastic job here in lane number 3.
Yeah.
And in lane number...
That's Pablo in lane number 2.
Pablo.
And both of them are just busting out repetitions.
Yeah, I know CJ's well-conditioned for this event. You know, a couple months back, he had a bit of a bicep twinge, so he was a little nervous for this. But right now, it looks like it's well-healed because he's really banging reps.
I would not have been able to tell you that he was hesitant on this at all. He's attacking this bag.
You know, he's a former college wrestler as well, and I know you can relate to that.
I got love for the wrestlers.
Yeah, and he's a gamer. You know, you know, I wrestled in high school. I know you wrestled in college. CJ was a college wrestler as well. And he just knows how to compete, and that is a skill that, in and of itself, is a different thing.
I love that you say that because that's something that I tell. That's something I tell a lot of people, and you can tell immediately when I say that some people understand that concept and others don't. They think, well, the preparation is all in the gym, and then it's all like done. And some of the preparation is in the gym, but really, the skill of competition is a skill in its own.
It is.
The skill of competing.
It's not something that you can even necessarily train somebody in. They just have to keep on exposing themselves to competition in order for that skill to develop in themselves.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Very few people have that just inherently. It has to be learned through a grueling process.
Absolutely. And you know, you see a broad, we'll say, distribution of aptitude for it. But again, you know, some people can learn it a bit more swiftly. Other people, it takes a long time to develop that. And it really does come down to experience and in what I've seen from athletes and what I've seen from myself as well.
Right.
All right, so we got some.
Right now we have some weight changes. It looks like, you know what classes are we heading into now? We should be heading into the men's 120 kilo division, I believe, for lanes 3 and 4, which should be first person up should be, let's see here. Well, my score sheet's out of order, so I'm having a hard time determining who's up first. But based on the scores, we should have a Jared Collins and a Luke Young. I believe Jared is the gentleman in lane number 3, and I believe that's Luke in lane number 2.
I believe you are right. But we'll see in just a moment. Let's see if I can refresh this. Correct. So we do have a Luke and a Jared out there.
And right now, you can see Jared is going with the crossbody technique that we were referencing before. It looks like both gentlemen might be doing that.
Excellent.
Jared with his first successful rep. Luke should be just about there in a few moments, as long as he gets that on that shoulder properly.
Actually, I think we may have misspoke. I don't think Luke is out there.
Oh, it's Moore.
Yeah, that's a James Moore in lane 2.
So James Moore just opted to take off his belt. Why do you think that is? Why do you think James would take off his belt in that moment?
Oh, man, there's several reasons that would come through, but given that was a soft belt, I would make the assessment that he was probably feeling the belt shifting the bag on his stomach. So he's trying to get good contact between the bag and his body so he can move his body and thereby move the bag. But sometimes when we have a couple extra layers, like a belt right there, it can create some extra slip, and it can reduce the amount of power that you can put into the bag, thereby you know, making it much harder to actually get the bag to the shoulder. Yeah,
and Jared Collins there just narrowly missing that last rep on the buzzer. But I really appreciate his aptitude for grinding. He clearly really wanted that repetition. And you're going to see that a lot this weekend. See a lot of folks out here really kind of giving their all. Now, we see a gentleman out here in a grip shirt. Now, what would the benefit be of that? I know it kind of is, self-explanatory, but for the folks that might not know why he's wearing a very shiny-looking shirt, what's that going to do for him?
Yeah, so that is a Cerberus grip shirt that we're seeing, and the black shirt on the screen right now. And that's going to actually assist the athlete in keeping the bag pinned to their body. It increases the friction between the body and the bag. And we had a little loss of control right there. Looks like he's plenty strong to lift that 275-pound bag, though. But the shirt can help to keep the bag in contact with the body and create less slipping, which is going to allow the athlete to transfer more power into the bag and move the bag more efficiently, get more repetitions. And again, that's what these athletes are getting judged on. They're trying to get as many repetitions in the 60-second time frame as possible. That's how you're going to get more points. That's how you're going to get a better placing. And that's going to be how you get qualifying spots.
Yeah, you win this show.
Yeah.
Yeah. I heard points are good.
Yeah, points are nice. They nice. We like those. Yeah, so Luke over in lane 2, an incredible loader.
Do you coach Luke?
Sorry?
Do you coach Luke?
I do not coach Luke, but I've worked with Luke on many occasions, and the first time that he came into Dungeon, he's actually moved over to Idaho, but the first time he came into Dungeon Strength in Auburn, Washington, he had an incredible aptitude for stone lifting. Just like an incredible aptitude. His build is perfect for it. And I've gotten to speak with him on a couple occasions since he's moved over to Idaho. And just an awesome loader. He recently loaded a 365-pound stone, which is it's a big mark for a lot of athletes in their career. And I would not be surprised if we see a 400 load from him later this year. All right, so we have a Nathan Heddick in lane 4, and I believe that is Tanner, I believe that's Tanner in lane 2. Again, it's a 275-pound bag. That is not a light bag that those guys are tossing around. Nathan good for another repetition.
Yeah, Nathan Heddick, from that first event to seeing Louis event, well, he seems very practiced with his pacing, and he's very deliberate with the technique he's trying to use. Seems well practiced.
Yeah, he's quite efficient once he gets it up to the lap, positioning well, keeping it nice and tight to the body, big pop, shifting the body around it, sticking with it, getting it to that shoulder, displaying control, waiting for that down. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and he's pacing. You can see, he knows it's something that he's clearly practiced in terms of timing, and he knows when to go and when not to. And that really is, that's that skill we were referring to in knowing how to compete. And here we go for the last 4 seconds. Can he get this last one?
I want him to get this so bad. Oh.
Just missed out. But a great performance regardless. A great performance out of Nathan Heddick regardless.
Man, I really want him to get that repetition. I like watching him compete. He's come a long way in the last year. He's another athlete that I saw last year at Static Monsters in Lake Washington CrossFit.
Right.
And he has gotten stronger, and he's actually lost about 30 pounds of body weight. So he's actually leaned up a little bit. He said he's feeling a little bit better, and yeah, he's looking in top form. This is the best I've seen him.
And this is our last grouping of the day for our men's 110 kilo class. We should have...
So we have a Zachary Hash in
lane 3. And I'm not sure who's in lane
4 is going to be, lane 2 is going to be a Tanner Jacobson. So, see these guys busting out repetitions.
And Tanner Jacobson, you're right, for lane number 2.
Nice.
Now you can see Zach Hash here is going for he's going crossbody, but interestingly enough, in the lap position, he's getting his left arm underneath the bag before he even initiates his extension. Which is, it's an interesting style. I don't know if it's one that I personally have utilized or necessarily teach, but he seems to have some consistency with it.
So again, some of the variability in technique is really fun to watch, especially for the people that are interested in the technique of this and the different events. Why would you say someone would put their arm under when they're trying to swing the bag up?
So based on what I'm seeing here, and a nice little showing there of Zach, it seems as though, and a good job out of Tanner, out of the sweaty pig as well. So what I would say is if an athlete's opting to start with the arm underneath the bag, especially if they're doing the transition to over the body, he's probably well confident in his biceps ability to maintain the positions as he's starting to extend, meaning it's not going to drop down on him as he's extending in the air, and then giving him an advantage in that initiation of pushing over the body. So where some folks will start with arms double over, as they extend, they then have to quickly transition. He's opting just to start in that transitionary position, which is probably saving him some seconds with each repetition, so long, with the caveat being your arm has the ability and strength to maintain that after a full minute, because that's frankly hard. You put a lot of weight on just one bicep, you know what I mean?
Absolutely. And so at the end of the day, like just like we were talking about at the beginning of this event, just like we were talking about the beginning of the barbell clean and press for repetitions, it comes down to what technique can you use to get the most repetitions in this event.
And starting our open men's division in lane number 3 here, we should have a Terran shower borrow. Let's see what technique Terran opts to go with here in lane number 3.
Bringing it up nice and high in that horizontal position. That seems like that's a little bit of a challenging position to accommodate to. He really kept it horizontal a long time.
Right.
Waited quite a while to swing it over to the shoulder. What do you think of that?
You know, I would say an athlete like this, you know, he probably isn't as comfortable with the bag in the wide position as he's extending. That's kind of what I'm observing here right now. I would say this might be a guy that might be better off in that Japanese style because half of the bag will be nearly over the shoulder just in the lap position alone because it's tall. Right, so if you're an athlete who struggles in that middle, meaning from lap position to shouldering, that style might be beneficial. However, that said, he might not be able to pick it that way, so he's opting with the style that he knows he can get it off the ground. And he still is here getting repetitions.
Excellent fight, excellent display of control right there. I agree, and I don't know that it's really coming through on the stream, but he is very tall. He's a very large human, like his wingspan is very big, and I think that impacts his decision on what style he's using.
Right.
Because his proportions are a little bit different than some of the other athletes that we're seeing.
Yeah, and for those watching, this is a 300-pound bag for reps, I believe, for this open class amateur men. In this next grouping, we have in lane number 2, we have David Watson, and in lane number 3, Chance Dale out of lane number 3. And Chance is also an athlete out of Dungeon as well.
Absolutely. Going to be exciting to see these two go head-to-head. And again, we see that Chance is electing to use a grip shirt.
Yes.
Looking to get that good contact between the bag and his body.
And again, it might not come across on stream, but Chance is 6'8". He's a huge, or 6'7".
He's very large.
He's a huge human.
Absolutely, and very strong as well. But, you know, strength will take you so far. In this sport, it is so important how you move the weight and how you move with the weight.
Right. And you can see here Chance just opted to change his techniques. It seems as though he's struggling a bit to break the ground with the bag right now. In lane number 2, we have David doing pretty well. You know, he's fighting in the middle fairly long, but David is sticking with it, keeping that bag over the center of his mass, staying over the hips, allowing him to fight in that center portion, which is frankly exhausting.
It is absolutely exhausting. You have the bag just crushing your lungs, and you give a little bit of air up to that. You breathe out a little bit, and you have 300 pounds sitting on your lungs. That is not a comfortable position to be in, and is very challenging to breathe. And it's not uncommon to see some athletes get really lightheaded or even lose consciousness in this kind of event.
Yeah.
But fortunately, we have a bunch of athletes here that are very experienced. If they start to feel that, they can just put the bag down, take a step back, gather themselves, and then reapproach the bag.
Absolutely. And in lane number 2 here, we have Jordan Reimers again. And in lane number 3, we have Tomas Zayas III. Tomas is a former member of Dungeon, and Jordan is a current member of Dungeon.
I actually got the chance to talk to Tomas in the back between events, and he mentioned that clean and press was a PR for him.
Oh, that's amazing.
It's the best he's ever done. In his training, he mentioned he was really struggling to even put 1 rep on the bar at that weight, and he got 2 repetitions, and I really think that he could have even potentially gotten 3.
And what I love about this heat, you could tell these are athletes both coached by Dungeon coaches, because they're both opting for that Japanese style with the longer bag, which I think is more proficient once the bag gets to this size.
Absolutely, yeah. The bag sitting tall in the lap allows you to more efficiently drive the bag directly up and just straight to the shoulder. No additional drag from swinging the bag. But again, it depends on the athlete, the athlete's proportions, the proportions of the bag, the conditions, exactly what's going on.
Yeah, and Jordan right now is putting on a clinic, by the way. I believe he's on rep number 4 or 5.
He's a strong athlete.
And 10 seconds left. He's opting. Oh, he's going to go back in.
Oh, he wants another one.
Again. Can Jordan do it in less than 10 seconds?
I think he can do it. I think he's going to do it.
And he does it.
Man, he moves well.
Way to go,
I love
Jordan.
watching him compete. He's just such a fun guy.
Jordan has truly gotten so much better in the last year or so. Again, another Dungeon athlete, coached by Dungeon coaches, really put on a clinic here. And you'll see, what'll be interesting too is, you'll see out of the athletes out of Salt Lake City, Utah, for example, they're at slight elevation. So they might have some conditioning advantages over the athletes here, because we're at sea level. And that is a very different thing. They might have an advantage in their conditioning. So we'll see going forward. All right, so in our last grouping of the day for our open amateur men, in lane number 2, we have Sam Sheether, the powerlifting extraordinaire. And in lane number 3, we have Axel McCrum.
This will be a fun one to watch. Both very strong athletes, taking first and second in the open amateur in that first event. So these are the first and second places from that first movement.
And we see here Sam going for the Japanese style. We have Axel going for the traditional horizontal style. Sam seems to be on a very good pace here, already on rep number 2. He looks competent in his pick. Axel a little more slow, a little more methodical. Probably an event that it's still new to him. He's a newer strongman athlete. Now, one thing I'm seeing now with Sam, who just missed that rep, is he's grabbing the bag quite high when it's in his lap position. I would recommend he gets it a little lower with his hands. That way that transition is a little easier. Because right now he's having to walk it forward each time because the center of mass of the bag is getting further away from his hips.
Absolutely. And when you grab that high on the bag and you go to drive the bag, one of the major issues is the bottom of the bag swings out in front of you, and then you lose it out front, just like we just saw right there. The bottom of the bag got a little too far out in front of him. He wasn't able to keep the center of his plus the body, his body plus the mass of the bag over his feet. It got in front of him, pulled forward. You can't save it at that point.
No, and I think because of that style, I think Axel was able to catch back up with him in reps. So I think right now we're going to have a real battle with this open amateur men. I definitely believe Jordan Reimers won that event handedly. I'm interested to see where Axel and Sam fell into place here, which we'll find out in just a few moments. So we are already done with the first 2 events in our novice and amateur divisions.
We are moving along. This is a quick one.
Yeah, it is. And that really just goes to the proficiency in showing the proficiency in the loaders and handlers here and how fast we're getting this going. So now we have our next event here. Would you like to describe this event for us? What's going on here? Because this is the OG Rainier Medley. It's bad. It's real bad. Would you like to explain this one to folks watching?
Yeah, we're going to see some yoke carrying. We're going to see some keg carrying and loading over the bar, and then we're going to see some sandbag carry and load over the bar. And this is a fun one because it's combining several different events all in one test.
Right.
We have a yoke, which is known for being a very heavy movement, very unruly. The weight is going to be centered much lower much lower than the shoulders, and so the weight has tremendous leverage. If you're not smooth with this yoke, it's going to be tossing you around. So we're going to see some athletes really getting tossed around the field by the weight if they don't know how to move with the weight.
Right.
And we're going to see some other athletes moving very swiftly, efficiently, smoothly. But we're going to see athletes carrying this yoke down, and then we're going to see athletes loading the bag or the keg and then the bag over the bar. There's a couple of things that are interesting with this one. Most of the time when athletes are loading, they're loading to a set height.
Right.
Now, this is going to be different for different athletes. The taller athletes are actually going to be loading over a higher bar.
So
do you think that's going to be? Yeah. Do you think that's going to impact them at all?
Of course. And then honestly, what you'll notice is a lot of folks, I'm sure, will pick their yoke heights far lower than they normally would, because it is worth it to be able to get those objects over the bar. The medley doesn't end with the yoke, right? So a lot of people are willing to take that much harder yoke run in order to ensure they can finish the event. And we'll get to see that in just a few moments here. That being said, we're going to take a quick break for me and Zach here. We're going to go off and get some refreshments and help out some of our athletes. Please stay tuned. Please share the stream with everyone at home that you know watching. Thank you so much for tuning in thus far. We'll be right back with you guys.
See you soon.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the stream for our third event of the day, the original, the OG Rainier Classic Medley, where athletes will run a yoke 25 feet down and back. They then will load a keg and finally a sandbag over the yoke that they just ran. So me and Zach were just talking about how the height variables are going to really make this event that much more challenging depending on where these athletes decide to put their yoke heights. In our first lane, in lane number 1, we'll have Melissa Wang Yoon in lane number 1. And in lane number 3, we'll have the gentleman Jacob Martin. They're both competing in our novice divisions today. Once again, I'd like to thank Mr. Zach McCarley, former world's strongest man, current elite level and international level strength coach. And then there's me, Alec Jose. So, nice. Thank you so much for tuning back in, everybody.
You know, you say that, but you just got done coaching at World's Strongest Man.
Yeah, I was coaching at World's
You
Strongest Man.
you literally just got off the plane last night, like late last
10
night.
hours ago. Yeah. No, for those that might not know, Zach is quite literally the most decorated American strongman in the 105 kilo division and arguably the 90 kilo division if he wanted to stay there. And he's also now an international strength coach. He coaches Angelica Jardine. I coach internationally as well, like Lucas Hatton, Inez Castillo, and a few other great folks. So, you know, we kind of know what we're talking about,
Just
like a little bit.
Just a little bit.
And more importantly, we are extraordinarily excited to be watching this event in particular, which was an invention of Rob Kearney. This event in particular, he came up with this.
Aware of that.
Yeah, Rob came up with this event for the Rainier. Year 1, he was the primary sponsor, and he came up with this event in particular because he's sadistic. We also, and briefly, just want to congratulate Rob on a retirement. And here we go. The event is starting off. We have Jacob Martin in lane number 3, pardon me, and Melissa Wang Yoon in lane number 1. And Jacob is off fast.
Absolutely. That's a quick start, nice and steady. You can see he's controlling the weight really well. There's a little bit of slide right there.
Now, he might get penalized for that slide. He might get a few-second penalty.
I would say, yeah, if I were the lane judge, he would be getting a 2-second slide penalty for that.
And is that the norm for something like this involving a yoke, Zach?
Yeah, a lot of times when we have athletes sliding through a line in this kind of setting, they're going to acquire a penalty for not carrying the weight the entirety of the distance. It's not so much an issue when you're competing on asphalt or grass or rubber mats because the yoke won't slide, but this finished concrete really allows the yoke to slide quite a ways.
And Jacob just finished that.
Wow,
in
that
a pretty
was,
rapid time.
That was fast. That was really good.
Melissa Yoon is chugging away in lane number 1 there. She unfortunately just dropped before loading the keg, but what that means is she will be accredited with the distance she did carry the keg.
Absolutely. And so I do think that we will see a couple ties, even though this is a timed event. We may see a couple athletes tying for distance carried. What will occur is we may see someone finish the yoke and then carry one or both of the implements all the way to the bar but not be able to load it over. And in that circumstance, the scoring would work as not a time, but the distance that they moved with the implements.
Right, and sometimes you do something like split times, had 2 people, let's say, loaded the keg or sandbag faster than the other. But today, the judging, we are not including split times. We are just including the distance they traveled. So you're right, there is going to be a number of ties today. Now, getting ready in this second grouping of athletes in our novice divisions, we should have Celia Bonk in lane number 1. In lane number 3, we will have a Halawa Pacolina, pardon me if that pronunciation is incorrect. And in lane number 4, we will have a PR. He just goes by PR. That's a gentleman out of Salt Lake City, Utah, out of the Sweaty Pig. Now, I was mentioning before that they are above sea level, so he might have some conditioning advantages here over some of the athletes who train at sea level year-round.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see how that comes through. Seeing if some of the athletes from a higher altitude are going to be a little better suited for the conditioning aspects of this challenge.
Absolutely. And here we go. We're about to start. Let's see if PR's altitude training will come in handy in terms of his conditioning and performance in this event. Now, he's already down 25 feet, as well as that gentleman who's also right next to him in Halawa Pacolina. In lane number 1, we have Celia Bonk starting her second stride. PR is well ahead right now. He's doing a fantastic job, opting for a mixed grip style approach on that keg load. What do you think about that?
I think that's a great way to get moving. You can see that he switched to both hands over the top. when he went for the load, that helps to really allow the keg to roll up the body.
Right.
And so it's clear that he's done this before.
Right.
It's very clear.
His coach is a gentleman named Connor Gordon, who is the owner of the Sweaty Pig, and will be competing in the Pro-Am division today. He has 10 seconds to load that sandbag. Can PR get it? And he does.
Well done.
What
Very
a
well done.
fantastic finish.
Just
Great
popped
job.
it right up, taking a couple breaths, saying, hey, what was my time?
Right. And all in Salia just barely missing out on loading that keg. Great effort out of Salia Bonk out of lane number 1. In this next grouping, we're going to have Casey Kamaku in lane number 1. We'll have a Nichelle Pena in lane number 2, a dungeon member. In lane number 3, we'll have a Joseph Valentine. And in lane number 4, we'll have a Jamison Burr. Now, right, for all those watching, this is our novice divisions, not quite the amateur. So these are folks who are, generally speaking, truly new to the sport or inexperienced with the sport. So having a novice division allows an opportunity to get their hands and feet a little bit wet within the sport, but not quite go up to some of those really heavy weights that we'll see even in this amateur competition, which, frankly, these weights are on par with amateur nationals. So it's not a light show, even in the amateur division.
Absolutely. You know, we like it heavy here in the Pacific Northwest.
Well, we like winners. And sometimes you got to push to make winners here in the West. You know, the Pacific Northwest actually has a deep and rich history of power athletes being brutally successful, whether it be Jesse Marunde, Grant Higa, you know, even track and field stars, as well as best in the world are out of the Pacific Northwest. So it's an interesting environment in terms of strength sports up here. And here we go, about to start our next heat here. Let's see how our athletes. We have a gentleman opting to go barefoot in lane number 3.
You know, I noticed that he was barefoot in the first event as well.
Yeah, it's Joseph Valentine.
Yeah.
That's a bold move. What do you think about that, Zach?
Well, it's kind of tricky. In this exact circumstance, I think that he may be choosing to go barefoot to get better traction on the finished concrete. Sometimes the finished concrete can be a little smooth on the bottom of the feet, especially if you have any particulate or dust on the bottom of your shoes. So taking off the shoes in this kind of circumstance can actually increase the friction between his feet and the finished concrete, which is going to allow him to have a little bit more control of the yoke.
And a Jamison Burr, the fastest of the grouping to finish. Fantastic effort. And we have Nichelle trying to get that sandbag to get a time going. I think she'll be the first woman to finish if she gets that, and she is the first woman of the day to finish.
Just popped it straight over. You know, she comes from a powerlifting background, and you can see that bar is nice and low.
Right. She got a big squat on her.
Yeah, she's got a great squat. Her deadlift is gorgeous.
Yeah.
Her deadlift is gorgeous. Like, I'm excited to see her deadlift later this weekend because it's perfect.
Yeah. And her coach,
mechanics are gorgeous.
Her powerlifting coach is a woman named Heather Connor, who currently holds the world record deadlift in all federations as a lifetime natural athlete, and she's an IPF multiple-time world champion. So she's coached pretty astutely and well, and by Heather Connor.
All right.
Her strongman coach is Lucas Hatton.
Excellent.
All right, in our next grouping here, we should have a Shauna Russell in lane number 1, a Caroline Feinderfelt in lane number 2, pardon me, Caroline, if that's incorrect, a William Velasquez in lane number 3, and a Adam Kudlow in lane number 4. This is still our novice divisions thus far. Actually, this is our masters women and our novice heavyweight men. Now, for something like this, Zach, now how exactly would you train yourself for something like this? Are you one of those sociopaths that would run the event in its entirety constantly, or would you break it up in segments for your training? What would you do?
Oh, it depends. You're gonna hear me saying this a lot.
You did shake your head yes when I said sociopath.
Yeah. I do like to make the competition day feel much easier by going much harder in training.
Classic strongman approach.
Yeah, if that's doable. If it's not doable, then of course we don't do that. But it does depend on the athlete. Say, you know, so in this we have a heavy yoke, a heavy keg, a heavy sandbag, and for me, I'm experienced with all of them. But if I had an athlete that was inexperienced with one of these movements, I would focus on that movement in particular and allow them to develop that skill coming into this. And then the last couple weeks, we would be making sure that they acquire the conditioning needed to actually perform the entirety of the event.
And you'll see here in lane number 3, Velasquez, another athlete training from altitude, and his speed is quite fast. He'll be the first to load the keg in this grouping, already going back to the sandbag. And he's a young man. I believe he's 15 or 16 years old. He's a high school student. plays
Very
football,
nice.
and I know he's thoroughly enthusiastic about strongman. Oh, and he just gets that sandbag
Well
over.
done.
Great job, Velasquez, in lane number 3.
Lunging for that load.
He really did.
Had me a
That
little
was close.
nervous there for a second.
He really was really close, and Ludlow nearly the same time as him. What a fantastic finish. You know what was really fun about Velasquez there? Even in his young age, he had the wherewithal to throw his belt off after the yoke in order to get the object he wanted to load, just to keep it that much closer to his body. That's a pretty good experience out of someone that young. That's another athlete who's clearly, he knows how to compete. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, yeah. That composure is important, and you know, another aspect of why he may have decided to take the belt off is just the breathing.
Right.
You know, because you know, you can do a yoke alone, and you can wear a belt the whole time. It can be very supportive, but when you're doing something like a keg carry to a load or a sandbag carry to a load after an entire yoke carry down and back, it's going to compromise your conditioning. It's going to compromise your ability to breathe. And when you're hunched over trying to pick up a keg or a sandbag with a belt on, it's going to make it so it's harder to breathe.
Right. And you know, I heard breathing is good for you, especially when doing medleys.
Yeah, you know, a little bit. I mean, like, you know, we got to breathe a little bit.
Sometimes. And our next grouping here, as they're setting up the event, we'll have just 2 athletes. In lane number 1, I believe I have one of your athletes in the women's women's amateur division, in Rochelle Killian. And in lane number 3, we'll have Scott Sherman, both are dungeon athletes. I believe you coach Rochelle, don't you? Or Rachel,
yes,
rather?
Yep, Rochelle. Her
Rochelle,
and I
pardon me.
work together and have worked together for quite a while. She's actually a multi-sport athlete. She's done a lot of powerlifting. She's done strongman. She's done bodybuilding, and you know, a very versatile athlete.
I believe she's also a master's, right?
Yes.
So she's
correct.
opting to compete against the open division for the amateurs in the 140 and not against masters. That's really cool.
Yeah, yeah. She likes to go hard, and I respect that a lot.
Yeah, I know you do. I know you do. And Scott is another, he's a 170 athlete, 175er, pardon me, the men's 80 kilo division. He's coached by Lucas Hatton out of Dungeon. And I'm looking forward to this group. You know, both athletes should be pretty well practiced, and you know, the training environment at Dungeon is unlike anywhere else. So this should be a pretty fun group to watch.
Absolutely.
I'd like to take a quick moment to thank our sponsor for this event in particular, and just most of the show as a whole, in providing the sandbags out of Cerberus Athletics. Thank you so much, Cerberus, for sponsoring this event and the entirety of the show. They provide quality sandbags for us to lift and throw around, and have been a major supporter of this contest since its inauguration. So thanks again to Cerberus.
Absolutely. Another one of our sponsors, Puget Sound Pizza. If you're in the Tacoma area and you need some pizza, that's where you go.
Yeah, it very much is.
That's where you go, Puget Sound Pizza.
In fact, the owner of Puget Sound Pizza is competing as well today. Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent.
Have you, so in your career, when you were competing before this event starts, I'm sure you had events similar to this. Have you, in your career, have you had events, because this is extremely dynamic. I personally have never seen this concoction or amalgamation of types of tools in one medley.
You know, that's one of the, I want to get to that question, but I do also want to highlight that that's one of the fun things about this competition is the promoters typically elect to do some very unique movements. And in the past, we've had movements where they're throwing sandbags and then going over to load sandbags. Very different disciplines. At that point in time, I had never even heard of a sandbag throw in a medley of any kind.
Same.
You know, and this one is a fun one as well. It's not uncommon to see something like a yoke to a drag or a yoke to a farmer's carry, but a yoke to a carry and then a load, and then an additional carry and a load. It is somewhat of a unique test, and it's not something you see very frequently. I've seen a couple of competitions similar to this, or a couple of events, I should say, similar to this, but you know, I would say that this one is a bit heavier than your average medley.
Yeah, most definitely. And what I like about this medley in particular, because of the different modalities that it incorporates, you know, some athletes might not be as proficient in running under load, but they're incredible at loading objects, for example. And you know, some athletes will be vice versa. They're great under the yoke, but they're not particularly talented at picking up sandbags or kegs. So it really is a fun test of a well-rounded strong man or woman. And here we are about to start this next heat. Again, we have Rochelle Killian in lane 1 and Scott Sherman in lane 3. Looks like Rochelle is taking off quite well here, quite proficiently.
Yep, nice start, nice and smooth, flowing with the weight. That's a great example of how to move with the weight. Go all the way through, taking a little bit of time.
Opting to keep her belt on, going for that mixed grip approach. I'm sure it's something that you worked with her on.
Yep, so we have Scott just about to finish up the yoke.
Unfortunately, he had to drop there and finish. They made them make sure he gets over the line there. Rochelle about to load the keg. Oh, unfortunate drop there.
And this is a tricky one because, you know, when we're going into a keg load, it can be, you know, and you just got done with the yoke, you're going to be breathing real hard.
Yeah.
And that's going to compromise your ability to brace, your ability to move, your ability to load.
And it looks like Scott opted to just get the keg to the yoke in order to score as many points as he possibly can. Great effort out of both athletes here, but this really just goes to show you just how difficult this event is in particular.
Absolutely.
And our next grouping, we should have Vivian Lau in the amateur women's 140. We also should have Shelby Duncan in the amateur women's 140. That's lane number 2. And in lane number 4, we'll have a Richard Kamaku, and he is a master's man. Now, I can't wait to watch Shelby in this event because she, as I like to describe, is a goofy goober. And she's either going to blitz this or dance quite a bit. So it's going to be fun either way. Don't worry, she's a really good friend of mine, so I could say that. But she is one of the most fun athletes, at least in my opinion, to watch compete.
You know, she has been a really fun one to watch today.
Yeah.
She moves incredibly well.
She does when she does. And then when she doesn't, it's funny.
Well, we're going to see which version of movement we get with this event.
Yeah. I'm also looking forward to watch Vivian Lau as well in the women's 140. Let's see here. Oh, Shelby's off quick.
Nice and smooth. A little bit of instability. She hung on to it. Excellent.
Kamaku already done with his first stride of the run. Shelby about to finish her second stride of the yoke run. But she goes even further than she needed to. They're going to pull that back for her. Yep. Shelby opting to go with a double same side grip on the keg. It's interesting.
Reaching over the top, getting good extension, loading it over the bar. Very nice.
Vivian just getting to the yoke. Now Kamaku about to load his keg. He's almost there. He just needs to push a little further. Shelby's about to finish the run.
You did a great job
Shelby
sticking with that.
Shelby's fighting here with that sandbag at the yoke. She needs to push. She needs to push. Oh, she's going. Oh. A mistake with her hand placement there, unfortunately.
Very tough. These athletes have a little bit of time left. Let's see if Mr. Kamaku can get that sandbag up and over.
Shelby opts to stop there just before. Again, this goes to show you just how difficult this event is. And, you know, I have some athletes competing in the show, as do you, and I told all of them, get used to picking very low on your yokes because it is not worth an easier run on the yoke, in my opinion, compared to where you have to finish. And, you know, you can see Shelby there opting to say what looked like to be her traditional yoke height, but because she's so tall, that just makes that load so much harder.
You know, this is very true. And, you know, another thing to consider is you're going to be a little bit gassed on the loading portion of this event versus the yoke. In the yoke, you're going to be a little bit more fresh, and you can work a little bit harder early to save yourself that work later with that lower yoke height.
Yeah, exactly. So in our next grouping here, as they start to reset this process here, we will have Katie Moore of the women's 160 division in lane 1. We'll have Alicia Saragosa in lane number 2 of the women's 160 division. We then will have Brian Morcade in our Masters men in lane number 3. And in lane number 4, we have an Eric Shuddy, also a Masters men competitor. So again, Katie Moore, Alicia Saragosa, Brian Morcade, and Eric Shuddy.
Excellent.
Now, I know Alicia Saragosa in lane number 2. She's also another athlete out of the Sweaty Pig. So it should be fun watching her compete here. Actually, I believe this might be her second strongwoman show ever.
Wow.
Which is, you know,
she picked a tough one.
She really did. She picked a hell of a show for show number 2. And for those that might not realize the magnitude of this show is a qualifier for the Arnold Amateur World title. It is also a show that will get you a pro card. It is also a show that will qualify you for North America's Strongest Man and Woman. This is a very difficult show because of all the things that it qualifies athletes for. So if you make it through this show as number 1 or number 2 or number 3, you are an athlete that is ready to compete nationally, if not internationally.
Absolutely. All right, we just got lanes getting kind of all set for these athletes to tear this course up. Looks like we have a little bit of a yoke height adjustment, making sure everything's right.
And I'll just take a moment to thank another one of our sponsors before we set up this event in Maverick Sports Spine and Rehabilitation by chiropractor Dr. John. John has been a real long-time member of Dungeon since the beginning, essentially, and a massive supporter of the show. And I'm sure a lot of athletes will be using his services, if not during the contest, thereafter to make themselves feel better between days 1 and 2. So thanks again for Maverick Sports and Spine for sponsoring this contest.
Absolutely. Incredible at what he does, and he also competes in the sport.
He does. He was a competitor here last year.
Yeah, he's very aware of the injuries that can occur, the movement dysfunction that can occur, and just overall great guy as well. Looks like we're getting those last pieces of equipment out here for lane 2. Got the keg and the sandbag adjusted.
Yeah, it's a quick little weight change for the women's 160 division there. It seems as though one of the tools went out there. About ready to go. Probably the next 10 seconds, if I had to guess. Thanks again for those who are watching this live stream. Please do us all a massive favor and share this stream with your friends and get as many of your friends watching. And here we go with this next heat. All right, we see here Brian went with a very low pick on that yoke, probably for the exact reasons that we were talking about just a few moments ago.
Absolutely. That is quite a low pick height. That the bottom of the yoke bar is actually closer to his solar plex.
Yeah. Yeah, he must know that the low portion is probably where he'll have the most difficulty. We see Saragossa in lane number 2 running over to that keg rapidly. Eric Shuddy already with the keg load doing fantastic.
Very swift. Eric is very swift here. Brian good with the load.
Saragossa opting for the Japanese style on the keg load. Oh, choosing to go horizontal now that she's at the yoke. What an interesting technique change.
Let's see if
Oh,
she
what
gets
a
it.
high.
It's up there. She got to
It's
push it
so
over.
high.
Got to push it over. Got to stay with it. And just lost it right there.
See, that's another athlete that I think probably, Brian just finishing with a fantastic time. That's another athlete that might have benefited from a lower yoke height. It's just too high.
Absolutely. And it was just right there. Even one pin lower, 1 or 2 inches lower, could have made the difference on that one.
Because at that point, you're almost better off just shouldering it. Because an extension is a lot harder.
Absolutely, yeah. After a carry as well.
Brian out here really leaving it all on the floor. That was a really fantastic finish out of Brian.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that was a really fun heat to watch. And our next heat coming on up, we will have a Bailey Facemeyer in lane number 1 out of the Sweaty Pig. We'll have Amanda Letty in lane number 2. We will have Arlo Patton in lane number 3. And we'll have Matt Earhart in lane number 4. Bailey, another athlete out of the Sweaty Pig in Salt Lake City, Utah, coached by Jenny Draper, who's currently right now tied for the lead in this very contest. So an event like this, as fun as it may be, it is really strenuous to set up and reset up every single time. So
absolutely.
Thank you so much to our loaders and helpers and friends and family who are helping do that, because this is probably by far going to be the worst event of the weekend to help reset after so many heats.
Absolutely. And, you know, we're going to be seeing some athletes competing this afternoon as well. After this session, we're going to be seeing the pro division.
Right. So tune in for that. If you want to see some pro athletes, some current world champions, former world champions, and other athletes vying for their spot to go to North America's Strongest Man and Woman, tune in this afternoon because it's about to get litty. All right, here we're about to start this next heat here. Again, we have Bailey Facemeyer in lane number 1, Amanda Letty in lane number 2, Arlo Patton in lane number 3, and Matt Earhart in lane number 4. And here we go.
Nice.
Letty off to a fast start.
Very swift start.
Letty already on her second stride. Arlo following suit. Oh, Letty seems well practiced and well proficient right now.
Coming through really strong.
Oh, wow. She bullied that over. She didn't even change her grip.
Yeah, that was quite impressive, actually. When she started to go for the load, I thought to myself, I don't know. And then she just tossed it straight over. That was fast.
Now,
that
Bailey,
was smoking fast.
in the women's 160 division, it's going to be very difficult to beat that time. That might be an event win.
I agree. That's right up there with about as fast as you can do it.
It really is. And we still have 2 amazing athletes to follow suit in the women's 160. So I'm really excited to see where Letty stacks up there. And Bailey getting the sandbag, and I'm fairly certain that was a PR for her to get that whole thing. So great job.
Yeah, and we got Matt finishing the medley as well. Very well done.
Arlo getting the keg over just in the nick of time. Good job, Arlo.
Excellent.
All right, that was an exciting heat. Now, in my very biased opinion, we have a very fun heat to come next in the women's 160 division. We have the current Arnold amateur 64-kilo world champion, Tasha the Wolf Whalen, in lane number 1. Lane number 2, we have top 10 in the world in the 73-kilo division, Jenny Draper. In lane number 3, we have Connor Krankelborg. That's a fun name. And in lane number 4, we have Dick Gale.
Excellent. Yeah, this is going to be a fun heat to watch.
So lane number 1 and 2 is really going to be some fireworks because these two women are quite literally top 10 in the world in both their respective divisions. And you know, not for nothing, Tasha's kicking butt right now in being tied for first in a class that isn't hers, right? She's competing against a woman who's taken top 10 in the world twice, I believe, in Jenny Draper, and she's holding her own. So it's really fun to see this.
Both of these athletes are fierce.
Yeah. You know, Jenny,
fierce competitor. Oh, sorry.
I was going to say, Jenny with the rhythm, with the tism out here, going to do a really good job. Is her self-proclaimed nickname. Here we go. This heat's about to start. I'm really excited to see those two.
Both of them having a slightly lower yoke height than normal.
And they're
them
off.
Getting down there for that pick.
Seems as though Jenny has a slight advantage on the yoke, but not by very much. Tasha's right with her.
That looks like Dick had a little bit of an early drop.
Connor, early drop there. Jenny already on. Let's see, Jenny's going to go for the Japanese style on the keg.
Quick.
Something that I coached her on to make the load a little easier, see if it works out, and it does. Saves her time on that load. That's why we went for that Japanese style. She's already ahead of the Wolf. Let's see if she can finish strong. Jenny fighting the load. And she just gets it ahead of the Wolf.
By a fraction of a second.
Wow, so interestingly enough there,
close.
It looked like Jenny might have had the event win and just a little bit of a hiccup on the sandbag. So I'm fairly certain that Letty stole that event win. That's really cool. It's good to see another athlete who might not be as experienced as the other two showing out like that.
Absolutely. That's going to mix the points up a little bit, and it's going to be interesting how that affects the points for tomorrow as well.
Right. So it looks like at the end of this today, because are they doing another event today?
This will be our last event for the amateurs today,
right.
and then we have 3 events this evening, or I should say this afternoon for the pros.
So that means that Jenny finishes the day in first place by only a single point, though. So it's still a tight race between her and Tasha the Wolf. I believe Letty is now in 3rd place. So good job of those amateur in the women's 160 division. That was a really close fight all day today. That was fun to watch. And Connor Gordon as well doing a great job. Connor Krankelborg doing a great job in his heat. In our last heat here for the women's division, we have in the 180 amateur, we have Annalise Coleman in lane number 1. We then will have Craig Tucker in the men's 200-pound division in lane number 3, and we'll have Kevin McCanta in lane number 4. And again, those two are in the 200-pound men's division. Craig right now is in the lead of the contest for the men's 200-pound division. And honestly, a really fantastic showing out so far for Kevin McCanta as well.
Absolutely. It's going to be interesting to see these two square off. They do have very different builds.
Yeah, Craig is quite long and lean. Kevin is quite squatty, if you will, wide and strong legs.
Very powerful.
Very powerful guy. And what's interesting is Craig, his yoke height is so low. Craig is not the best yoke runner. It's something that self-admittedly is not his best event. So it'll be interesting here to see if we see a swinging of points with Kevin.
Absolutely. A very low yoke height selection for Craig.
Yeah, it's actually the same height as Kevin, who I think is significantly shorter than him. From what I can tell, at least, it looks like it's similar height.
Yeah, very similar height. It's going to be interesting to see how these two compete head-to-head here. These two are going to be fun to watch all weekend, honestly.
Yeah, these two will be going head-to-head. And Connor in the previous heat. Those 3 have been really going after each other. Looks like we're checking up on some weights really quick as the competition's going. See some heads turning. Probably confirming some weight matrix.
Yeah, making sure everything's all set.
Yeah, and might as well take this time really quick to thank another one of our sponsors in Jack Squatch Supplements. That is a supplements company that is sponsoring this contest. Thank you so much, Jack Squatch, for sponsoring this show and providing athletes with supplements to make them more successful and ideally healthier individuals. Craig out here saying he's going to give it a go. He's an incredibly athletic guy, being a CrossFit coach and a former CrossFit competitor, making a transition over to strongman. And he himself is also a pretty talented coach. So let's see here. Looks like the athletes are getting a thumbs up signal to get themselves ready.
I'm just waiting on the lane judges.
And again, in lane number 1, we have Annalise Coleman in the amateur women's 180 division. Annalise doing a great job so far in this contest. Here we go, getting ready for this last heat here.
Little bit of a whip for everybody on that one.
Yeah, Annalise finishing fast and strong in lane number 1. Looks like Craig and Kevin are neck and neck right now.
Absolutely, very close to one another.
Craig getting the kick to start on the keg. Craig going for that Japanese style. I actually just told him to do that in the back. And he's going for the shoulder instead. Brave approach by Craig.
That's a good way to go.
It really is. Kevin at the lap now with the keg horizontally.
Big load. That was actually an impressive pop out of the lap
Craig
from Kevin.
finished. Already finished. Taking the lead of the contest. Kevin getting the sandbag to his lap. Opting to shoulder it as well. Smart move. Fantastic finish.
Very nice.
Out of lanes 3 and 4. We have Annalise trying to finish that sandbag in lane number 1. It's the last implement of the heat. Come on, Annalise.
Pulling it up there, staying with it.
Oh, her steadfastness to keep extending. What a strong person.
That's time.
Great work out of all 3 athletes here in this last heat involving the women so far. Now we're going to transition just to the heavier men. Fantastic heat out of Craig, Kevin, and Annalise.
Absolutely. It looks like Nate Lundstrom is going to be the sole competitor in this heat. Coming up, we're getting our weights flipped around again. A huge shout out to our loaders and spotters.
Yeah, Nate Lundstrom of the men's 231-pound, 105-kilo division in this amateur show. And one really interesting thing about the men's 105 division, especially in the last recent, let's say 5 years, it is really starting to expand internationally and get similar opportunities to the men's open division and at least the amount of international shows there are. There's a lot more competitions for world titles or even just amateur showings for that division, and it's really fun to watch it expand. That's a class that, frankly, you were one of the original pioneers of.
I mean, you could say that there were many people before me, but
at least in America.
Yeah. Well, even still, there were people before me. You know, the current competitors always stand on the shoulders of the people that came before them.
Yeah.
You know, and it's fun to see the sport growing. It's fun to see it evolving, and as the sport grows and as the weights get heavier and the athletes get more athletic and more swift, we just see better and better things coming out. And so it's fun to be part of that, and it's fun to be one of the people that helped to build that.
Yeah, and you know, as far as I'm aware, you're not quite done. I believe you have a contest that you're about 9 weeks and 4 days out in Germany, right?
Correct.
And a new world title for the 105s by Ultimate Strongman. So that'll be really exciting. I know you're in prep for that right now.
Yes, sir.
And how do you feel? Feeling excited? Feel strong?
Feel good. Just took a week off, like letting the body chill out a little bit, making sure I'm ready to like come in hard. I've been dieting for many weeks at this point, down to 230, waking up at 230. That's really nice.
That's amazing. You're walking at weight now.
Yes. No weight cut for Zach this time.
Yeah. For those that might not know, your last competition was America's Strongest Man last year.
Yep.
Where you took second place.
Yep.
Which is a fantastic showing out of you. Only losing out to another fantastic competitor and our boy Chunky Cheese.
Yeah. Jeff Lee is an incredible competitor. Also, just like all around great guy.
And who also just podiumed at World's Strongest Man 105. So it's not like you lost to anyone who wasn't good.
It was America's Strongest Man is a fierce competition because you look at the podium from America's Strongest Man, and then you look at the podium from OSG, which is those World Championships.
And 2 of them were on it.
Yeah. And you look at the person who won OSG,
right?
Daniel Hughes. If I'm not mistaken, he took 4th at ASM.
I think he might have taken 5th or something.
5th.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean that just tells you the level of competition in the United States. One tiny little slip up is going to cost you several placings.
And now he's the world champion.
Yeah.
Isn't that incredible?
Incredible. And it's funny. I got to say that I saw that coming, and going into last year's ASM. He was the one that I was looking out for.
Same.
He was the one I was like, okay. Woo.
He's very
and then Jeff Lee came up. He's like, I load stones, fool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
And Jeff Lee does. He has the world record on the Stone Load series for
he's
105s.
incredible. He's incredible. He's like, yeah, he's a very, very strong guy. Also, just like fun. Just fun. Always smiling, always
Great dude.
laughing. He's very enjoyable to be around.
And it looks like we're about to get started here with Nate Lundstrom of the 231 amateur division going out by himself right now in lane number 3. Let's go, Nate.
All right, here he goes.
Little bit leaning forward on that pick to start. His hips weren't quite underneath him to initiate that yoke run.
Yeah, I would agree. I'd say the weight was a little bit in front of his toes as well. That pick was, his feet were a little back. It looks like he's in a slightly better position, trying to control where those hips are.
Yeah, it's definitely more focused
Nice
effort
and
now.
steady. That's excellent. Yeah, that walk back was considerably better. It looked like he learned a little thing on the way down.
Here we go,
Coming
Nate.
through to a nice low pick. Grabbing the far side on the pick, coming through. It does look like...
And this is a 250-pound keg, I believe. This is very heavy.
Not light by any means.
Yeah, in the middle of a medley, you know what I mean? That in and of itself would be something used for just to load by itself, not even after another event.
Absolutely. He's got about 10 seconds left, if I heard that
But
correctly.
at this point, he's just trying to get some distance.
He's going to give it one more pick.
You know, and for Nate, you know, that's probably still a fantastic showing out of him. This is probably an event that he was looking at being one of the more difficult for him. But, you know, still, being able to get that keg over is still going to be some good points for him. And pardon me, no, that's a 270-pound keg.
Oh, yeah.
So-
That's, you know, it's heavy.
Yeah, it's really
good,
heavy.
You know, it's 40 pounds heavier than his body weight.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Right, and, you know, that sandbag, I believe, might be 300 pounds. Yeah, something along those lines. Either way, it's heavy as hell.
Yeah, the weights here are not light.
No.
We do not like lightweight in the Pacific Northwest. We like to
No.
go heavy. We like to go hard. And we like to get our athletes ready for the absolute top level of competition.
And the reality is, you know, it's a qualifier for the Arnold World Championships. It has to resemble that of the show they're trying to get to, right? So having lighter weights will not prepare these people for the show they're eventually trying to get to. So in this last heat here of the 230-pound men's division, in lane number 2, we have Pavlo Ivanusa, pardon me. And then lane number 2, we have CJ Packer. And right now, I believe CJ Packer is leading the men's 231.
This is going to be really fun to watch. They're both quite dynamic athletes.
Yeah. And I know CJ isn't the biggest fan of yoke, so we'll see if it holds up for him.
A little bit of a slow start for Pablo.
And Pablo's catching up.
Man, he really moves well.
He really does. Let's see how CJ is able to
nice
finish
and
strong
steady.
here. Pablo's really taking his time in that initial pick, but then his strides make up for it.
His cadence on his steps are so well timed.
Yeah, and I
He's
know
so smooth.
I know CJ is very proficient at sandbag loading, but let's see how he is with this keg.
That was a good move from CJ. I really like what he
started
did
with
right
the double
there.
side there
Yep.
and gets the lead.
Yep. And Pablo's over, just a little bit behind. Let's see how the sandbag goes. They're both at the sandbag.
Yeah, that staggered approach I'm not the biggest fan of for running a keg. And here we have CJ was able to make up the split and win the show by doing a much more proficient hold of the keg, I believe.
Yeah, I do agree. He had a little bit higher position on the chest. It allowed him to carry it high and then get a little bit more extension as he approached the bar and just pop it straight over. He didn't have to relap. He didn't have to take extra time there. That was clearly something he's practiced quite a bit.
Yeah, no, CJ is well coached out of that great gym we already mentioned out in Salt Lake, the Sweaty Pig, and he's ending the day with, I believe, 3 first places.
That's pretty darn good.
Yeah, he's doing okay. So good for CJ. Let's see here to confirm that I'm correct. Yep, first place, and first place for CJ Packer in the men's 231 division. What a great way to start the day.
Yeah, so it looks like next up we're going to have James Moore in lane 2, and in lane 3 we're going to have Ryan Nutter.
And this is the men's 265 division, right?
Correct, yeah. So we have a little bit of a weight swap right now. The loaders are out there busting their butts. Huge shout out to the loaders and spotters.
Yeah, this is a very difficult event to manage, not only from the event staff team, but even just as an athlete. So all around, it's hard, but it is a really pleasant event to view because it challenges so many different modalities that we already mentioned. And frankly, I'm a really big fan of this one. Thanks again, Rob Kearney. And I believe his original inspiration for this was to put a 400-pound bag in the pro men's division, which we have done. And the reason for that is no one's ever finished it. You know, so we're going to see, hopefully over this weekend, we'll have some pro men actually finish the event, because it's never been finished before.
Yeah, and those of you that tune in for this afternoon session will get to see that today.
Yes. So here we are again in lanes number 2. We have James Moore. In lanes number 3, we have Ryan Nutter of the men's 265-pound amateur division. These men are vying for their spot to compete at the 120-kilo division at the Arnold Sports World Championships, the amateur show, which is, as of right now, is the only world title to feature a men's 120-kilo class. So these men are actually trying to compete in what is essentially the world's strongest man for their class.
That is fantastic. You know, James did a great job picking a good cadence for the yoke carry. And he's already got the keg all the way over there. That is really tough to spend all that energy, getting it all the way up there, and then just to miss out right there. It looks like he's saying, I'm shutting it down.
Yeah, James is opting to stop, and frankly, it might be for the best. You know, he already has a bit of a lead there over his competitor, and he knew he didn't have another load in him.
Very close on that load.
All right, good work to those competitors in James Moore and Ryan Nutter. Fantastic effort there. And our next heat to come, after we get a nice full reset, will be a Trevor Dahl and a Jared Collins out of Salt Lake City.
All right, so got our judges measuring distances, making sure everything is squared away. Scorekeepers getting everything down. So these athletes that are just finishing up, this is their third event of the day.
Yep.
What would you say they should be doing now that they are done with day 1 and they have 3 more events tomorrow for day 2?
So I'll tell you what I'm having my athletes do in between day 1 and day 2. One, they're all doing ice baths, because with 2-day shows, you need to keep the inflammation down. You actually don't want your body to process inflammation or to essentially go into recovery, because that's going to make you feel bad. You know, you're not trying to start a healing process because you're, gaining strength. What you need to do is put that off, feel as good as you possibly can, and then thereafter, make sure that they inundate themselves with zinc, magnesium, and some glutathione and some glutamine. Those minerals, those supplements, and maybe even get some from Jack Squatch supplements as well, will help with the inflammation process, staving that off, and more importantly, replenishing the minerals that they just expended in these events right here. You know what I mean? You need your mineral deposits, things like zinc, things like magnesium, to be constantly replenished when doing events like this, because that is the first action that your body will use when expressing ATP or expressing any of those early onset energy systems. Those minerals in particular help rebound, reset those, and get you ready for the next day.
Excellent. I think that is a fantastic bit of advice right there. And for those at home, ice baths and cold water therapy have become a lot more popular in the last couple of years, but I think that you did a great job illuminating something right there, that they actually can inhibit recovery.
Yes, and that's, in my opinion, the real only goal of using them. It's not something that I would use particularly year-round, because it will then slow down potential hypertrophy process, slow down a little bit of recovery. But for certain events training, let's say you're closer to a show or even at the show, there are times where you want to inhibit inflammation processing, inhibit the healing process, because you need to feel good enough to do it. We're not trying to heal from it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's something that I don't hear voiced enough, and so I'm really just happy to hear someone else saying that, because oftentimes people will be like, ice bath every day, got to get it down, and it's really what it does is it creates an environment that is not optimal for actually getting better over the long term.
No. Again, the only times I've had athletes use it is we're much closer to a show, like think anywhere from like 3 to 5-ish weeks out, and then at the actual contest, assuming it's a multi-day show, because otherwise if you're 12 weeks out, 24 weeks out, that's the time we're building. We're trying to build mass, we're trying to create density, we're trying to create new systems of approach, so that's not the time to stall and gains, if you will. So again, here we have our event in lanes number 2. We have Trevor Dahl, and in lanes number 3, Jared Collins, both gentlemen in the men's 265-pound weight class.
All right.
And it looks like we have Trevor here with a bit of a lead over Jared.
Yeah, he's moving really well on the way back, taking his time. Not a sprint, but a little jog. Breathe a little bit, get that keg
He's going
up.
for that mixed grip approach. I'm not the biggest fan of that. feel like it gets in the way of the legs as you're trying to create stride, and then you have to create that transition anyway to switch hands. But a seamless load.
Excellent.
Dahl's doing a great job here. Jared is just finishing up his second stride of his yoke. He really should get that keg over for some big points. Come on, Jared.
Nice and steady carry.
Trevor doing a great job. Can Trevor load?
Got to get that contact a little higher on the body.
Yeah.
Just a little too low in the lap. Arms are too straight.
And it looks like, honestly, both these gentlemen are just truly experiencing the weight of this event because they're both exhausted.
Absolutely.
As they frankly should be.
It's again, it ain't light.
No, this is a very heavy event for them. Great performance out of both these gentlemen. And looking up the weights here, just for giggles in this class in particular. Let's see here.
I want to say the yoke is probably around 725-ish.
Yeah, for the 265 men's here, we have a 725 yoke. You nailed it. A 270 keg and a 300-pound sandbag. It's just brutal. Just brutal.
Yeah, so there are many competitions where the yoke that they're doing would be the entirety of the event.
Right. That's it. That'd be it. Down and back.
Or the keg carrying load with the sandbag carrying load would be its own event.
Right. I mean, this really just goes to show you just how dynamic and hard the show is. And again, we're trying to send people to world title shows. So if you're not ready for that sort of work, maybe you shouldn't be going.
That's the truth.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, there's a standard to upkeep, and this show is now a regional championships and a massive international qualifier, and it's so fun to watch. Again, in our next grouping here, we have Luke Young in lane number 2 and Nathan Heddick in lane number 3.
This is going to be fun to watch. Both of these athletes are quite tall, and so they're going to have to be loading really high. I'm not sure either of these athletes outside of training for this competition have had to load to this height in competition because they're both so tall.
And they, granted, their yoke heights are really high, in my opinion, but that said, they are so brutally tall, so it's probably not as cumbersome for them. And it looks like Heddick here with a great first load.
Very impressive. That was fantastic.
It looks like he's still opting to keep his both belts on too as well. Just maybe has so much proficiency with the bags.
Great position. He's going to pop that right over.
Wow. Great performance.
Great position.
Great performance out of Nathan Heddick in lane number 4. It looks like Luke just fell over there with the keg. Seemingly okay. Yeah, it looks like he's all right with a little bit of a fall.
Yeah, a little bit of a limp. It looks like the keg kind of came down on his leg a little bit right there on the pick.
Looks like Dr. John of Maverick Sports and Spine is going to help take him in the back and just probably check him out. He should be totally okay. Great performance out of Luke.
He is a tough one, I'll tell you what.
Yeah, great performance out of Luke Young and Nathan Heddick there. This is our last grouping of the day. We have Zach Hash in lane 3. And Tanner Jacobson in lane number 4 of Salt Lake City, Utah, the Sweaty Pig. So we have a Dungeon athlete and a Sweaty Pig athlete who are the first and second in the show. The showdown of gyms.
Zach, don't disappoint me.
Yeah.
We share a name. We share a gym.
It's a lot to be sharing. I love you both. Big fans of both gyms. Sister gyms. So you know what? I'd much rather see our sister gyms leading the show.
Yeah. Well, Zach couldn't disappoint me if you tried.
No,
I like him way too much.
He's pretty cool.
Yeah.
One of the world's strongest firemen, great competitor, and very good. And a very nice warm welcome by Lucas Hatton, our head judge. Totally didn't just flip us off. All right, so lane number 3. With love. Lane number 3, we have Zach Hash again and Tanner Jacobson in lane number 4. This is going to be a really fun heat.
All right, here we go.
Here we go, boys. Okay. Both similar yoke. Look like Zach is taking off on that yoke. Looks like Jacob is just about to finish the first length. That's our Tanner. But the first length there.
Yeah, Zach has a great pace, but it's not how quick you can do the yoke. It's how quick you can finish the event.
That's
so
right.
We'll see how this goes.
Well, with this advantage, you should be finishing quite soon.
Yeah.
He just missed his regrip there and opted to continue anyway. And Zach Hash, let's see how he regrips here at the low position. Tanner is already on the keg. Running fast. Great regrip there by Tanner.
Big
Easy load. Both gentlemen on the
sandbag.
Oh, both gentlemen are near neck and neck now. Zach is having a hard time with the lap. Can Tanner catch up? Tanner catching up with Zach Hash is going to be a battle here.
Tanner's in a really good position right here.
Tanner's going to get that load first. But here we are.
That's trouble.
Now
That
they're
is
fighting.
a trouble. Oh,
Can
he
he
did
do
it.
it?
He's doing it. He's getting it.
And he does.
Very well done.
Wow.
Very well done.
Zach Hash and Tanner down to the wire.
Very close right there. Very close.
Unbelievable. Sister gyms demonstrating equal strength. Fantastic efforts by Tanner Jacobson and Zach Hash. That was a great heat to watch.
That was really fun to watch, and it's a bit of a case of a tortoise and hare, where Zach came out really hot, great yoke, went to the keg, kind of took his time, had a little bit of a stumble once he got to the bar, and then Sandbag gave him a lot of grief. That conditioning, you got to wonder if the altitude did play a factor.
It could. Personally, the thing that stood out to me most with Zach was he went for a regrip, on the keg and missed, and then continued to run anyway, which is a not bad, let's say, backup plan just to keep going. But then he struggled to get that grip back once he was in the lap position, and I think that's what gave Tanner the opportunity to recatch back up and load. And it looks like, frankly, Tanner was a little more experienced with having optimal positioning for those loads, and it showed in the end there.
Yeah, I do think Tanner's carrying position was notedly better on both of the implements directly before the load. He didn't have to relap on either of those movements. He was able to just take it to the lap, set it, and then go and load. Versus picking it up, carrying it, relapping, adjusting, then loading. It
really does come down to those little things and those micro transactions in order to shave off fractions of a second, because ultimately that's what it's about. You need fractions of a second to create distance between first and fifth. You'll see little things like that completely change the outcome of the show.
Yeah, transitions matter a lot.
It really is the whole sport after a certain point of progression and success. Now here we are in lane number 4. We have a sole competitor out in Chance Dolahate in the men's open amateur division. Chance is a really big boy. There's a chance here, that he might be quite proficient at these events, but we'll see. It did look as though he was struggling a bit with the extensions of the sandbag to shoulder to begin with. So I'm really hoping it was maybe just that event and not just, maybe Chance not feeling his best today. I also happen to know that Chance is coming back from a pretty big recovery in his shoulders. So I'm glad to see him even on the competition floor to begin with.
Absolutely.
Here we go.
All right, he's getting into position.
He's taking his time.
A little bit before he was ready. As an athlete, you got to be ready. When you're getting there, you got to get into position. You got to be ready to go on the whistle.
Especially at a contest like this with the amount of athletes, they're going to be hustling and bustling. But so you're right, stay ready. But this yoke run is fantastic at a Chance. It looks like he's feeling okay. Hopefully this
he's a very strong yoke runner. I've seen him yoke 1,000 pounds.
Yeah. And for those, again, that you might not be able to tell based on the live stream, Chance, I believe, is 6'7". He's a huge human being. I'm really hoping he's able to get this keg here. Oh, it's really heavy.
It's really folding him over. He's really got to pull that in and allow his hips to come forward and allow his shoulders back so he can center his weight over his feet.
Right, and that, again, for those watching, that is a 290-pound keg, and it's not light. And, it looks like Chance is opting to cut it there or just get some points on the yoke. Great effort out of Chance. Really glad to see him back on the floor after recovering from an injury for quite some time.
Absolutely. Well, the next heat up we're going to have is going to be in lane 2, Tomas, and in lane 3, we're going to have a Dave Watson.
Yes.
These two are going to be fun to watch as well.
If I remember
very
correctly,
strong guys.
Yeah, both very strong. If I remember correctly, Tomas has an incredibly proficient yoke. If I remember correctly, I know he has real strong legs. He is coached by Lucas Hatton, a former Dungeon member, so I expect some good things out of him.
It'll be interesting to see what yoke height selection these two athletes take. It looks like Tomas is going with a slightly lower than normal yoke height.
Yeah, he's definitely opting to trust his legs a bit more on that pick and banking on it not affecting him too much from what I can tell in those positions.
He's so strong. He could squat this entire weight. I don't know for a fact that he's a 700-pound squatter.
I'm fairly sure he is.
I'm pretty sure that's very possible for him.
Yeah, he's a really strong powerlifter in his offseason. Looks like Dave Watson going with a slightly more traditional, albeit still lower pick height. So we see these gentlemen go here. Dave off quick.
Nice and steady from both athletes. Simultaneous drop.
And Dave with a more proficient pick and run start time. Great job out of Dave Watson in lane number 3.
Very nice, very nice.
Dave already onto the keg, opting to get that grip style that we prefer, that we were talking about earlier. He needs to lean back, though. There you go. Fantastic
Very good load.
Opting to throw his belt off to create more space for his belly to make contact with the bag. Dave Watson is competing well here. He's clearly experienced. Tomas, unfortunately, just dropping the keg. If Dave can maintain his position, he might be okay.
Big pop. He's got to stay with it.
Stay with it, Dave. Push, buddy.
Those
Push.
hips came back and almost punished him.
Great job out of Dave Watson to finish that with a really proficient time.
Very well done. We got Tomas taking on the Sandbag.
Tomas opting just to get some distance with that bag.
Getting a little bit of distance. That is the difference in this kind of event. You know, an athlete that only finished the load and didn't get the sandbag out of the backfield is going to be credited with that distance, but he was accredited with an additional foot or 2, however far he moved the back of that.
And this just goes to show you with an event like this, it isn't enough to be strong. Because statically speaking, it's more than likely that Tomas is a stronger competitor than Dave there. But Dave was more conditioned, and frankly, his positions were better. So if you have the technical know-how and enough actual conditioning to support the task at hand, not having quite the same maximal strength as your competitor, you'll still probably be better off.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So having a nice little reset here. The next gentleman to come on out for our third grouping of the Open Amateur Division for the men's heavyweight category will be Sam Sheether in lane number 2 and Axel McCrum in lane number 3. These two have been going head-to-head with each other the whole contest thus far.
And these two are fun to watch go head-to-head.
Yeah, they really are. I can't speak to the technical proficiency of Sam with his yoke. I'd imagine with his incredibly strong legs, it might be something that he's talented at. It's looking like he's picking a pretty low height. Let's see here. They're doing some adjustments. Axel, being an incredibly tall gentleman, has a very high height, but more than likely banking on the fact that the load over the bar might be easier for him due to that. But we'll see how he feels after that yoke run. Sam, I believe, is asking for the bar to go down, so he's choosing to trust his legs in that pick and to make that load that much easier for himself. Both of these gentlemen were pretty proficient, for the most part, on the shouldering, sandbag shoulder event. So I'd imagine the run and load should be within their capabilities. Be exciting to see that. Some final adjustments before we get this heat started. Love to take this opportunity to thank another one of our sponsors in Higher Power and Strength. Thank you so much for providing some fantastic shirts and support of the show. Here we go. And Sam off fast, but so is Axel.
Fast.
Incredibly
Sam
fast.
came out of there really fast.
If anything, Axel went too fast, letting the yoke too far. Oh, it's a massive slide. It's a massive slide. They're going to hit him with that. Sam Sheether choosing to take off that belt. Sam going for the Japanese style on the keg. Axel going for the traditional lopsided approach, but it looks like Sam might get it first. Oh, he does not. Axel gets it first. Sam struggling to finish this. He needs to get his hands on the keg.
That's a tough spot.
Sam, transition your hands. Axel already on the sandbag, but he's taking his time. It looks like he might be a little winded.
And Axel has that 2-second slide penalty, so he's really got to load this swiftly here. It looks like he's starting to struggle conditioning-wise.
Both gentlemen are fighting to load this bag, and Sam opting just to drop
load
it.
This. Axel's got to load this if he wants to have a chance of winning that.
And he does!
Very impressive.
Fantastic
Very well
showing
done.
out of Axel. He absolutely needed to do that because he would have been behind with that penalty.
Yep.
Wow, what a great finish for Axel McCrum and a great performance out of Sam Sheether.
Very well done. Very clutch from Axel right there. You could tell that he was tired. He's breathing hard.
You know, that really was a must-have situation for him because he's going to get hit with that penalty, but it is going to still get him points because he did finish over Sam.
Yep.
Great performance.
Yeah, very impressive. Very good. All right. I believe this is our last heat for this session.
Yes, this will be the last heat for the session of all of the novice and all of the amateur divisions. so far, what we'll have here in this heat here, we're going to have Tara Sharabaro in lane number 2. And in the lead of the contest thus far for the men's open amateur division, Jordan Reimers. Jordan really showing out hard, some newfound skills. His ability to compete is just improving. It's been a real joy to watch Jordan this weekend so far.
Absolutely, and he's electing for a bit lower yoke height.
Yeah, yes he is. And it looks like here we have the main sponsor of the show, and Ryan Terry. Without this man, none of this happens. We want to thank Ryan for helping put this on. He is the owner of Dungeon Strength, the primary sponsor of this contest, and a big old goofy bear.
All right, the athletes are just waiting on the lane judges, making sure everybody's right.
And for those watching, the weights for this contest, for this open men, this is a 725 yoke, 290 keg, 300 sandbag. Jordan off quick off that yoke.
Ooh, both of them real quick.
Now that slide is really taking that yoke far for those gentlemen. They're both neck and neck now here.
Oh, that's probably going to be a slide penalty.
Yeah, Jordan might have that slide penalty as well. He is more proficient, though, on that keg grab. Really proficient. So now he has to beat Axel.
Very smooth. Excellent extension over in lane 2. That was a really good extension. I was not expecting him to be able to just pop that up like that.
That was incredible. Both gentlemen finishing strong here. Jordan going for the Japanese style. He has to extend big, and he does. Fantastic.
Very nice job from Jordan. Very impressive.
Finishing so strong. Tara in lane number 3, still trying to get that sandbag. He's about halfway.
Yeah, I do wonder if that was a little bit of a hamstring tweak or a cramp.
Yeah.
We saw him reaching for his right hamstring.
I'm
Hopefully
hoping
it's
a cramp.
not a big deal.
I'm hoping a cramp. That's exactly what I was talking about earlier too, with replenishing magnesium and zinc between these days. Like, things like that. You know, without magnesium, you aren't going to be able to get proper function or expression of muscle tissue, the mitochondria, without that supplement. So please, athletes listening, take that, and ideally from Jack Squatch supplements. So
Absolutely.
That is the end of our OG Rainier Classic medley event. We're going to get ready to transition to some other divisions that are coming on up. Although, no, we have the deadlift next. We have a deadlift next. Right?
That'll be tomorrow, I believe.
Is it tomorrow?
Yeah,
It's tomorrow. You're right.
Yeah. No, so this actually wraps up our amateur side.
Amateur side done. We have pros coming up next.
Yep.
First, we'll have our pro middleweight division. In this particular case, the women's 82 kilo division. And we're going to talk all about that as it comes, but just know there's some heavy hitters in there, some current world champions, some former world champions. We also have the men's 105 pro-am division coming on up, also featuring some international talent. And then we have finally our men's pro division, open amateur division as well. So whatever, pro-am, pardon me. I'm tired.
So we're going to see some really heavy weights lifted. Some of these events are going to be adjusted a little bit. Instead of repetitions with the barbell clean and press, we're actually going to have a max. We're going to see some guys pressing easily in excess of 365. I would expect that we would see at least one person going above 400. We might even see something along the lines of like 430 pounds lifted from the ground to the shoulders, from the shoulders to overhead. It's going to be very impressive. It's going to be very fun to watch. I'm excited to see it. This is one of the ones that I'm most excited for this weekend. And we're also going to be seeing that extremely heavy OG medley.
Yes, a much heavier version. The whole contest is just the next level of what we all just saw in a fantastic, beautiful way, and we're really looking forward to watching that. That being said, before we head out, I just want to thank just one more of our sponsors in Dungeon Strength for being a primary sponsor of this competition. Thank you so much for Dungeon for making this possible, not only for all the vendors to come out, not only for all the sponsors to come out, but for all these athletes to be able to compete and have a good time. Thank you so much, Dungeon. My name is Alec Jose, and my partner in crime,
Zach McCarlin.
Very good. We'll see you guys soon.
All right, we'll catch you guys in the next stream. Thank you so much for watching.
Tune back in.